We're back, folks. Slightly later than anticipated. Many technical difficulties behind us. We still have a missing soldier here. We're about our fourth Grin Grappler man, but he will be here soon. Much going on, and as much as I may have, blamed Bob O'Neill in the live chat, he's actually the only one of us that didn't have technical difficulties here this evening. So we're off to a great start. And we have a special show ahead of us. It's always a special show in December. I mean, all these shows are special, let's be honest, especially after that house we drew a few months back. But we've been kind of riding those coattails, so to speak, right? And now it's December. We're going to add another unique show to the Grappler archives. Tonight we had our first manager, Paul Heyman. Very, very unique program as we look at his career through 6 matches, from management to even commentary at one point, and we even get some hilarious Paul Lee physicality along the way. So an interesting night ahead. The Oracle of Wrestling will be joining us along the way. We're not sure quite when, but I think pretty soon. And once he's here, we'll catch up with him. Obviously, Bob O'Neill, as I mentioned, you're the professional among us. No technical difficulties. How are you this evening?
Doing well. Looking forward to this one. Big Paul Heyman fan, Paul Heyman guy, if you will.
Wow.
Yeah, so, yeah, fired up to be here. Looking forward to the holidays, but good to be back to business here as well.
Do you introduce yourself that way when you meet people like, Robert O'Neill, Paul Heyman guy? Is that generally how you'd be? You did that to me, so I assume it was, No, fair enough. Bobby is locked in, as we can see. Contrarian Alex, you're ready to go. Festive as ever. The holidays are arriving here shortly. How are you this evening, brother?
Trying. Got back from vacation and my laptop's acting a fool now. I had to can blame part of this delay on me. I had to reset and try everything I could here. This thing's going into business for itself. But, we'll get it figured out, boys. And we're here this evening to talk about, as far as like a career span, got to be one of the longer ones that we've covered so far.
Yeah.
In terms, like, the first match we're doing is almost 40 years ago, and he's still doing his thing to this day. But no, me personally, Christmas is my favorite time of the year. Very excited. I still got to do my gift shopping, but that's a different story. Just got back from a brief, albeit very fun vacation to Tennessee, Kentucky, that area. Got to go to the Muhammad Ali Museum in the same weekend that I got to see Joe Burrow play football live in front of me. So, that's I was like a pig in shit, man. I had a great time and ate some hot chicken and back now. Time to get down to some real business here, though. I don't know, Bob. He went ahead and put that out there. I don't know if I'm ready to say I'm a Paul Heyman guy, but I have many thoughts, opinions, feelings, comments on Paul Heyman, and I'm sure they will all come out this evening.
I'm sure he's I think the polite way of putting it, he's a complicated guy, right? I think is the polite way to frame it. He's a unique individual. His story, I think, can be framed in 101 different ways, and I think there is a kind of generally positive sentiment that kind of takes the approach of what a character, I think some of his story is probably, that would be very, very generous to him to frame it that way, but that's often what we've gotten throughout, especially this, recent return, which is now, by the way, I say recent return. He's now been back for 12 years, which is not a normal, length of run for a wrestling manager, let alone one who's returning to the industry. Alex mentioned it's still very relevant. He had a huge return to TV within the last couple months. He was, we're about to cover a WarGames on this program, and he's like one of the main characters of the last WarGames, so that we just got here. So a fascinating one, certainly, one of the more significant people we've ever covered, I think, and that's saying something. I think that's undeniable with all that he's done. We should kind of, we always do the December special, and doing this, I am increasingly bullish that even though we're introducing this as a special, there's something to this format, I think, in general, of the manager, right? And what the manager kind of lineup can encompass. Bobby, I don't know what you thought watching through this, but as I was working through this, all I could think was Bobby Heenan would be a natural fit for the Grappler, right?
Yes, Heenan would lend himself tremendously to this format because you do have the commentary one too, so you do the 92 Rumble, throw that in there, and just, natural fit.
Yes, absolutely. Alex, I'm intrigued. What did you make of just generally doing the first manager and just it kind of opens up for a whole lot of variety, right? It was an intriguing watch, I thought.
Yeah, with Heyman, there's obviously there's a lot there because he did a lot outside of just like being a guy at ringside that managed people and whatnot. So there's some meat on the bone for things we could discuss, but it definitely opens the door to the future of some people out there to consider. Grin Grappler, Clarence Mason, Grin Grappler, Bill Alfonso. There's a lot of options that we have out there.
I agree. I know Bob was big on doing CJ. We'll see kind of how that develops, but there's a lot of pitches in the Grin Grappler group chat. We'll work through them, of course, but we should note now before we even get started here, folks, if your favorite part of this show is when we pick next month's Grappler, then that's already settled. That's already sealed. That's Alex's big day in the sun, so to speak. So nonetheless, we have a super J here from Frank, which we appreciate very much. We'll get to this right away. He says, I've been binging the last couple of weeks of LNG. The run Manny is on right now reminds me of Danielson's end of 2023, where he stole Wrestler of the Year with one arm and one eye. For those of you unaware of what Frank's referencing here, or I presume he's referencing most specifically, was that Manny was hacked live on the air on Friday and was combating this hacking while we were watching while we had Starcade 89 on. It was quite unique, Bobby, wasn't it? It was a roller coaster ride.
It was, and I think it ended with him getting his stuff back, which is good. It's impossible to tell with him, but
yeah,
it had a happy ending, I believe. But yeah, he's been in rare form.
To your point, I still don't know if he actually has go back. So you're right, it is hard to tell. He also tweeted that I was correct, that there was more to the story that he didn't want to share out of embarrassment. So now I have no idea what actually happened now, which is really fitting for Manny the Hooper. Thank you, Frank. I agree. He has been in rare form, no doubt. We appreciate the support. We're glad you've enjoyed the recent grins with Manny leading the way in that regard. He will not. I don't think he's got any upcoming bookings, but we always try and keep him factored into the rotation, no doubt. Bobby, how can people, if they're really confident they're going to enjoy this show, they want to show some support, how can they, is there a button they can click to do that?
Yeah, you can go ahead and smash the like button.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff. All right. Let's get started, boys. We have a lot to talk about. I think there is an argument that in terms of just sheer match quality, this may be one of the strongest grapplers ever, which makes sense, right? We'll be able to pick from a bunch of all-timers. Like, it's logical it would work out that way, but I think it's got a real case. Let's dive into, kind of as we always do, our fandom for a pro wrestler, in this case, a manager. Bobby, you led with, you're a Paul Heyman guy. Again, that's how you introduce yourself to me. So I'll kind of pass the ball to you on this one. When you became a Paul Heyman fan, how that has developed through the years.
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously I've been aware of him because he was there, with Brock when I started watching him, WrestleMania 18, but, I wouldn't say I was a fan of him. I was a fan of Brock, but it was just oh, this other guy, I didn't know who he was. So it's kind of over the years, you got to piece these things together, and I think I really became a fan when he came back in 2005 to lead up to ECW One Night Stand, and he was just standing up to Vince and Bischoff. It was all right, this is cool. And then from there, kind of just stuck with him, and yeah. And then again, over time, peeling back more and more and being oh, he worked in this place with this guy and this place with this guy. It's a kind of a big Venn diagram of a lot of my favorite wrestlers. Joe, you're muted.
Jesus wept.
It's a party in the Grin Grappler tonight, man. I'm telling you.
We will ring the first bell again. When did I even mute for? I was just sitting here. Did I even do that on purpose? I don't know. Nonetheless, yes, I was looking at that earlier when we were trying to put together the matches earlier a couple of weeks ago. I was looking at it's a very Bob O'Neill centric group of wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for telling me I'm muted, Bob. That's very much appreciated. Contrarian Alex, you're Paul Heyman fan. You were less, kind of bullish on the Paul Heyman guy tag, so I'm intrigued. You got the ECW lore too? Map this out for us, brother.
Yeah, I think just off the bat, it's worth calling out that I think my affinity, nostalgia, and overall love of Extreme Championship Wrestling is stronger than both of y'all's and probably Oracle's as well. And that obviously comes from a place of experiencing some of it in real time and just what that embodied or whatnot. So, but it goes beyond back before that. My first memories of Paul Heyman were as Paul E. Dangerously. And, I can't remember if we mentioned this on the last episode or if I mentioned this on the last episode, but I can remember him with the phone standing next to Rick Rude doing promos on, syndicated television shows from WCW and just some of the guys he managed. It always stuck with me because as a kid in 1992, 3, 4, I had never really seen a guy with a cell phone. I was like, what the fuck is that thing? So that always stuck with me. And then I remember when I first learned about ECW, the manager with like the weird haircut, like he's running a wrestling company now. And, diving deep as I could at the time into ECW, and really like by the end being like, I followed them until, they changed the locks on the doors, and Heyman, his appearances on ECW towards the end were fewer and fewer. And every time he looked like he had slept less and less. But I remember watching the Raw where he was on there when the WWF fired Stacey Carter and Jerry Lawler left with her. And so Heyman came in as a replacement. And, we'll talk about this with one of our matches, but I think from a television perspective, something that makes that year of 2001 so fascinating is that Heyman's on the call with Jim Ross. If JR and King are one of the greatest tandems ever, but the fact that King wasn't there and Paul Heyman came in to do commentary made that era feel different. Like it made it feel like, the landscape has changed. There's something new going on here. And then I remember when he showed up with Brock Lesnar, I was just like, well, Heyman's back. And he was with this new guy, which immediately gave him credibility because I knew who fucking Paul Heyman was. So I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. And, since Brock, I've taken a lot of joy in watching Paul Heyman and how he's, sometimes carnied his ways into situations or downright stripped nude, greased himself up and just wiggled into situations. So, he's an interesting cat through and through. And I think there's no way in our average about 2:45, 3 hours of the Grin Grappler, we're not going to get in all the Paul Heyman lore and stories, but they're all out there. And he's, I'll say this before we start, say what you will about Paul Heyman, you would be right. That's basically where we could start with that guy.
Yeah, and this was kind of an interesting one to prepare for because he is so well documented, right? I mean, he had the DVD release. What year was the DVD now? Was 10 years ago?
Maybe? Yeah, 2014, 2015, around there.
Yeah, and it's another decade of stuff added on top of that. He had the Hall of Fame.
He got the A&E biography recently too. Yeah,
yeah.
A&E. He has the Hall of Fame induction, which obviously comes with its own, like the way they package that, and all of this means that he is not someone that I think if you're watching this, you have a very, very, kind of colorful awareness of the Paul Heyman stories and the persona and such. So that's not to say we usually cover super obscure people, but I think this one is an extreme example of the opposite, where it's like he's regularly talked about because he's a booker and a manager. The personality behind the scenes is regularly discussed, right? And it has this almost caricature element at times. I think, in a sort of, I think sometimes it's bizarre, actually, the way he's treated almost like a cartoon character, as like a real person, but this is professional wrestling and things of that nature. In a minute, I'll kind of briefly go over the introduction of Paul E. Dangerously, Paul Heyman's pro wrestling. I think most people know it. We're not going to focus as much on that here because of what I just said. If you're watching this, I'm sure you've seen one of the many different pieces documenting his life and career. To explain broadly our acts here tonight, we have 87 is represented in Act 1, which is his first real run as like a major heel manager. We then get the Dangerous Alliance in. Following that, we'll talk ECW. We'll talk the aforementioned run on commentary alongside Jim Ross, which I'm glad we got to represent, and credit to Alex on that front. And then Act 3 naturally will be the comeback, in which we'll cover, to me, Brock, Punk, Roman. Like that's pretty much all we need, right? So that is what's ahead of us. Before we get to that, I'll kind of map out my own Paul Heyman fandom. He is someone that I think if you're a smart fan, I use that in air quotes very, very loosely, you'll be aware of the kind of, he's a little bit of a mythical figure when it comes to wrestling booking. if you have any interest in the topic of like wrestling creative or who are the great wrestling bookers, to the hardcore fan, to the ardent fan, he is he's that kind of, he has this sort of stature that is almost hard to ignore or hard to miss if you're getting into that deep into the fandom. You know, I think back to obviously the way that the ECW triumph has been documented and how he's kind of the focal point of that success story. And I'm not saying unfairly so, because let's be honest, it wasn't exactly an all-star squad, right? But like, he got a lot out of his team. And then like the way that was followed up by
Todd Gordon slander over here, man.
Yeah, my bad. Apparently his book is great, by the way. Nonetheless, the SmackDown 6 era, which is like maybe the most WWE main roster TV has ever been beloved by, like, again, that hardcore fan, you know, like, and then the way that he also was smart enough to always get out of situations before it damaged that image, and the way that he would avoid certain situations to protect that image, you know, shout out Dixie Carter. And he's, you know, to this day, you'll get stories of like, oh, Heyman had his hands on this. And it's always stuff that people like. He always makes very much sure that it's never, you never hear the stories about he's like, you know, his ideas that go absolutely nowhere. He's very, very, I think he handles it very delicately, like the way people remember him as a booker and such. And let me be clear, he is, I mean, obviously there's a great deal of genius to him beyond that. But that's the main thing that stands out. Yes, Alex, go for it.
And also, I think as history has kind of shown, he may be the only person that has told Stephanie McMahon to go fuck herself because everyone else is too afraid to. And, you know, which made for the true comedy of that picture of the two of them at the Hall of Fame this year. But, you know, it's in a time, and now I'm just speaking to like the 2006 exit that he had when Stephanie was like one of the most feared people politically. And, you know, he who knows what really happened, but it really seems like a lot of what came down to his exit was him telling her she was wrong, and that was just something that no one could do at that point in time.
Yeah, there is a whole section of his DVD release that's just like Stephanie sort of in a very corporate and polite fashion talking about how annoying he is, and like obviously Paul, I mean, the performance art from Paul on that documentary is outstanding. Like he's like giving like a life testimony, you know, and nothing is his fault. Of course it isn't. Couldn't be.
And for you and myself, Joe, and LNG, great confirmed shoot. Heyman is like an ambassador for us because he was a hero trumpeter of Buddy Murphy. So God bless him. Yeah.
I was surprised they left out of his Hall of Fame package, to be honest. That does feel like the kind of lead.
He's the only one, man.
Yeah, like I feel like if I was putting something together about Paulie's life and career, I would lead with, you know, Buddy Murphy, Truther, Paul Heyman. The other stuff's cool, like ECW was cool and all, but I don't know, the Buddy thing seems important. No doubt he had a tear in his eye as he watched on as old Booker Punk put together Buddy and Andrade on the Collision there on the TNT. It must have been a special night for Paul Heyman, no doubt about it. But yeah, we'll talk about that because I think that's an interesting conversation itself. That era of Raw where he's like High Chancellor again for some reason. All right, let's dive in here. So again, I'll do this very briefly because I think everyone knows it. His story is actually very similar to Cornette's in that they were both photographers, right? Who like that was their in into the business. He tells the story about sitting in on a Dusty Rhodes production meeting in Crockett and like just kind of hanging out there, and Dusty let him stay, which is wild to think about now when, you know, in 2024, Paul was sitting at ringside while Cody Rhodes finished the story. Like the amount of depth to that. And I know there was that great segment, right, Bob, where Dusty called upon the history of, Paul called upon the history of Dusty. Right? Remember that was that Raw, Bob?
Yeah, I think that was before the first match when Dusty had to come into ECW in 2000 or whatever, and they had that whole back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of depth to that, you know, it goes without saying. He promoted Bam Bam Bigelow's professional wrestling debut, was part of the nightclub scene.
That was the one at Studio 54, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
And not to cut you off, Joe, but real quick, because I don't think we're going to circle back to it. A very, like, for those who may not know, a very interesting part of 90s wrestling that went into, like, the OVW and the initial days of the what we now know is like NXT and the developmental system is the friction between Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman that existed. And I just wanted to call it out because it's funny. We're all fucking ringside observers, I guess, for lack of a better term. And they're different, but they're so similar, and I think that's why Cornette and Heyman never really got along. Cornette had that great line in one of his U shoots about, "Hey, Paul, I know you're full of shit. Just don't be full of shit with me, and we'll be okay, all right?" And it's they're both so similar and so passionate in their approach to wrestling. And I know they both obviously and rightfully have their critics and whatnot, but I've always found some odd charm in how much they didn't get along, just because it was probably they both probably meant the same thing, but it was just they're both so stubborn. It was just them colliding into one another.
Yeah, Bob, wasn't there a Bruce? What was Bruce's old quote? Because that's felt like the most apt Bruce Pritchard point when he used to talk about them being the same person, to Alex's point,
Oh man, what was it? I have to look it up now because it was great. Hold on.
Yeah, he said similar to. I mean, Bruce and Alex agree on a lot of stuff, but that would be
God.
Yeah, that would be probably among the top 10 or so, top 25. But yeah, and they work together, right? And it has to be said. I mean, if you were to poll current fans, Paul Lee would fare much more favorably than Jim Cornette, I'd presume.
Yeah.
But Jim's critiques of Paul and his issues with Paul, I think, were very understandable with some of the stuff that Paul did, right? I think we'll talk about that however we can. I do think it is important, and I'll establish this now. If you are a big Paul Heyman fan, God bless. Bob's a Paul Heyman guy, but I do think it's important we don't go full. Man, what a character at times! Because at times some of his stuff is more than that, and he's actively heinous and just borderline evil if we're being real. But nonetheless,
some of the stuff he did in ECW, his business practices, and also let's get some of the negative out of the way, so it doesn't seem like we're just fucking every time bringing it down. But he did tell New Jack, "I'll pay you $30 if you do that." No regard for people's health and just what it took and to get through and get by, and the amount of lying and backstabbing he's done to get to where he's at. That's what I said about the enjoyment of watching him carny his way through it. He has now been involved in more WrestleMania main events than people have actually wrestled in them.
Yeah. He's at this point he would have a crazy. If you added up the gate receipts, could you imagine what he looks like at this point? Speaking of gate receipts, the biggest draw in LNG history has arrived. Hello, the Oracle of Wrestling. We're talking about Paul Heyman.
How are you, boys? Folks, how are you?
We're about 1 3/4 right now. We've had a lot of technical difficulties. We need you in the match, brother. I'm gonna tag you in any second now. It's been a roller coaster.
Well, don't mind me, folks. I am munching on some Cracker Barrel holiday gimmicks here.
Okay, holiday gimmicks.
So
the view count's already gone up. Wow, Oracle, the power of Oracle, done it again. We were just talking, Oracle, about how he's very complicated, isn't he, Paul Heyman, in the sense that he, we have our fun with the stories, and then he did this, and then he did, but it's
yeah, I mean, hell, he might owe me money, for all I know.
He might, yeah, I think he does.
As JR aptly pointed out, he should give his accountant a call during the Survivor Series 2001 match. Yeah, he is a very complex figure. Just watch his Hall of Fame speech from last year. Yeah, he he was I believe he was a manager or a promoter at Studio 54 or whatever it was in New York City back in there when he was 18 years old or something. Or
that's exactly where we're at, bro. Perfect timing. That's exactly where we're at. He promoted Bam Bam's debut.
Mm-hmm.
Bam Bam convinced him to become a manager. Memphis would be his big break, which we'll talk about in a second. But Oracle, now that you've arrived, if you may, just so you're caught up, what would be your kind of timeline of Paul Heyman fandom? Because we all just mapped ours out, so take it away.
Yeah, so I started watching in the early 2000s. So my earliest memory of Paul Heyman was actually watching ECW on TNN with my dad in the summer of 2000, and Paul shooting on the network, and just watching it late night with my dad one time, and being like, "What the hell?" I was 7 years old. I don't know what the hell was going on. But he obviously his commentary gig was kind of my first exposure to him when he and JR paired up during 2001. I didn't really fully grasp like I like obviously through like the WWE sort of pushing the narrative and whatnot. I kind of quickly recognized the relevance of ECW and whatnot, but in terms of his actual overall importance to the business, I didn't really pick up on that until several years later. Probably really between the time he had been fired in late 06 until he came back with Brock and after WrestleMania in 2012 is kind of that period where I kind of realized and recognized how big of a figure he was in wrestling. He and it's funny because I always forget he was in Memphis. I forget like when I was looking into find the match list or whatever, I forgot he was even. I always forget. Like I remembered he was in Memphis, but I forget the timeline. Like that was really his first sort of big run was there. Involved in the tremendous, and we'll talk about it, Jerry Lawler versus Tommy Rich and Austin Idol program, which was honestly one of the last booming business programs in the history of Memphis wrestling, if I'm not mistaken. Did tremendous business, that cage match in particular. He was all out. He went there. Did the original Midnight Express angle, which went through different promotions. I think it was an AWA and Crockett. He obviously his run in WCW was very controversial. With in very up and down. He's created ECW. Promoted it and turned it into the Extreme.
Right.
Made it famous.
Oracle, I already gave Todd Gordon his prop, so we're all
set. I was about to say now. Let's give Todd Gordon his props here. I was literally just about to say that, but he that damn mole Todd Gordon, but he's just a. I guess it was probably when I started to explore that that older footage during the footage boom in the late 2000s, 08, 09, 2010. During the footage explosion, seeing all those Dangerous Alliance tags, right? For that 2009 Smart's Choice poll that I bring up probably 27 times a month here on this platform. He's always been extremely entertaining and over time, especially in the last 15 years, I've obviously gone to appreciate him a lot. Sometimes he's too over the top for me now and in the past for me. But he has a certain style of booking that he has created that is unique, that other people copy from him now. Really, he took a Memphis style booking and formulated his own type. I'm not saying he stole everything, but like it goes to show that Memphis, how influential Memphis was. He really took the Memphis style booking and kind of ramped it up by 20, right? I'm kind of jumping around here, but my two favorite moments for Heyman were one where I was there live a couple years ago at SummerSlam, and almost 20 years ago now, which is crazy to think, when they had the segment when they were building the first ECW One Night Stand, and they had Vince, Bischoff, and Heyman all in the ring together. And Heyman went off and did his shtick, and like as a 12-year-old kid who had seen the ECW DVD in the recent months, like popped huge for it, so like that was kind of the one when I was a kid that I loved, and then seeing him and he's great in that whole match in the Brock Roman Last Man Standing match. He's tremendous in the whole thing. He gets like F5 through a table or whatever.
Yeah.
And like the post, like just watching him like live in Nashville in that stadium, watching Paul freak out and shit, and like "Oh, my tribal chief." It was quite amusing. Like it was very entertaining live. So those just to throw those two tidbits of my favorite moments from him. But in terms of like, it's almost like a collective over the years, just kind of going to appreciate
Right.
how big and how special he is to the business.
You were talking about that timeline of like when
Oracle,
he was
do you
gone.
remember?
Go, Alex. Alex?
Oracle, do you remember when they started the 04 Rumble? They brought Heyman and Bischoff out. It was in Philly, and Vince came out to because they were going to fight and keep them under control. Like the big significance of that segment was that I believe it was the first time all three of them were in the ring at the same time together. And
yes,
and that's how the pay-per-view ended.
It's funny because I remember them getting in a fight and Vince having to like get involved, but I didn't remember where that was because they did have the 05 segment, and that's the one that always stands out to me. But I you've kind of put finally where that was, because I remember they had gotten in a fight, but I honestly thought that was like later on. But that's I definitely remember that show because something happens at the end. But
So before you arrived, Oracle, I was talking about kind of how he's like a mythical figure, Paulie is as a booker. All right. And I think your mention of the timeline of Grant appreciating more in those years he was gone, I don't think that's just a you thing. I think the growing sort of frustrations with what WWE was becoming in that era allowed Paulie's like legend to like grow and emerge as this sort of this deity, right? It's really interesting to look back on. He's like part of his reputation and image is wrestling genius. And I'm not saying it's unfair. I think it's honestly mostly earned. I just think it's an interesting thing by comparison of most wrestling brains who their misses are like highly discussed, and like Paulie kind of avoids a lot of that, right? Like he has misses and no one really dwells upon them. He's considered a wrestling genius. We were also discussing, and Alex was on the money, and I agree with him. This is generally we're not psychologists here. This is not really about us breaking down the people behind the matches generally. Paulie as a manager, I think, and a booker makes it complicated because it's part of his lore. Is like he's the character you see on TV to a lot of fans, I think. So we'll bring that up as we go. Part of the lore of Paul Heyman, I think, is relevant. And with all that being said, I think it's probably time to talk about some wrestling matches, boys. I think that would make sense, right? Let's dive in. Memphis, April 27th, 1987. As we mentioned, almost 40 years ago. My goodness. Austin Idol is Paulie's man here. He's opposite Jerry Lawler. Is hair versus hair. Is inside a cage. And in addition, this is the deal where Idol has like promised he'll refund. As there's that deal, which they would do this. This was like a semi-often play call, right? Well, this was a thing they would do, right? When they needed a house. Am I correct in saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This was a classic Southern style Memphis type of thing.
Yeah.
The heel, would promise a refund or whatever. Yeah, this is I really should do my research, instead I'm an asshole and come on here and do nothing. But I'm pretty sure this was the last feud to really, as I mentioned previously, to really do incredible business in Memphis and at the Mid-South Coliseum. This was like the last little rivalry that did like a nice boom for them in Memphis.
There is also, we mentioned some lore about kind of the personality behind the gimmick and the character. We should note there is an incredible amount of detail about the Jerry Lawler-Paul Heyman relationship, which we are introduced to here. Obviously, he's opposite Jerry. Bob, do you recall the Legends Wrestling Roundtable towel about Jerry Lawler legitimately intentionally punching Paul directly in the face while they were doing this stuff? Do you remember?
I don't.
Yes, this he drove Lawler. Yeah, he drove Lawler insane. Yeah, he did it on exactly. It's in the intro now, right? On the note, he drove Lawler insane, and Lawler like legitimately punched him in the face at one point, broke his jaw. I believe was what happened. So it quickly made friends in the industry. Did one Paul Heyman here? He used Paulie dangerously. Yes, Alex.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you wonderfully, Alex. How are you?
All right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My computer was acting up, and I think I fixed it, so I was just making sure that I didn't drop off there. Yeah.
Oh, you're fine, brother. You sound great. We were just talking about Paulie Dangerly.
Oh, yes. Dangerly,
yeah. Alex, do you remember Jerry Lawler punching Paul in the face? Do you remember this story?
Was it an accident or was it intentional?
That's
It was on purpose. Yeah.
there you go.
One thing before we get here real quick, we forgot to mention earlier, it was Paul Heyman as a teenager did the fucking photography at Madison Square Garden for magazines and shit back in like the punk rock days where you could just sell that shit off. And I forgot the reason I wanted to mention that was Bill Apter in one of the few WWF documentaries they included him on had the story of like, if I was at a show and I had the perfect shot lined up, an elbow would hit me in the face and Paul Heyman would be right there.
Again, quickly making friends in the wrestling industry. Paul Heyman here. Man, this is something. We've spent a lot of this first 36 minutes talking about how Paul Heyman is a complicated character. I'll get out of the way for everyone. We do not relish the chance to praise Jerry Lawler. He is a known rival of Bob O'Neill's and just generally people, I think. But
society at large, he's a known rival of.
But he's quite unbelievable here, I'm afraid to say. And Austin Idol is, my God, he's good here. This is punches, blood, and heat. And what more do you need in Memphis with a cage, wrapped? I mean, this is just glorious. Few wrestling captures its time and place better than this, boy. What did you make of this?
Yeah, I loved it. The shenanigans before and obviously the stuff after. Jerry Lawler gets led into the venue by the police. I wish he was let out of the venue by the police instead. But yeah, I mean, just for what it is, like I think the actual match part's only like 15 minutes, but they have the people the whole time. Like they're screaming whenever anything happens to Lawler. Just it's incredible, man. Everyone, the blood, just it's a hell of a time. And it's nice when these things get included in this because I know it's not something that I'm really going to go watch otherwise. Just, it's a timing thing. I know I'd like it, but like, it's always a treat to get something like this included.
It is. And it's, we're probably, we're never going to do a Jerry Lawler Grin Grappler. Bob's asked, we're not doing it, but we're also
already covered some of his best matches also.
Exactly. And like these shows, they allow us, this one's really cool because I think we're going to do an Austin Idol show. And it's like, it's a chance to do an Austin Idol match. He's great in this match, dude. I mean, he has juice like that. Jerry takes like the classic Lawler shine, which is just right hands, and Idol comes up collar. And what about one point, Austin Idol throws a punch and Lawler hits a, oh, Jesus. Unbelievable. Unbelievable piece of business here, Alex. And lest we forget what a dramatic scene this creates, too. Tell us about it, Alex. Go for it.
Yeah, and something I'm going to try here, with the exception of the Survivor Series match, because there's too much to call out. Try to kind of keep it truncated because we're focusing on the outside here and the manager. And Heyman does look like fucking. The problem is he looks so much older than he actually is here. Like he looks like a late 40s Wall Street burnout in the 80s who has like a very high cost coke addiction. And he's like, he's so thin out there and shit. And to Oracle's point, it's fascinating watching Paul E. Dangerously from ECW work the Southern Territory heel manager. It's just fascinating to watch. But yeah, this is, first of all, this cage looks fucking awesome. The way that like it's basically just the big steel mesh cage, but it's built like the Hell in a Cell in which it encompasses, the outside of the ring. And yeah, this is, dude, we've done a few matches with him, and it cannot be overstated how hot Lawler was in that fucking Tennessee those territories, man, like Memphis and Nashville and all that shit. And to your point, it's punches and kicks and a couple incredible looking pile drivers too along the way. But like, by the end of it, when he's getting his head shaved, he looks like he's like dead and dying. Like he's just it. And the people buy into it because by the end of this, I'm not comfortable saying we were near a riot, but people were trying to jump in the cage. Yeah. They were throwing trash at the ring. Like that. At one point, you can hear our big boy Lance on commentary, like, "Oh, gotta get out of here." He's talking about. He's basically working through his emotions in real time, and he had a cigarette with an ash this long on it while he was saying that. But in addition to all that, the house looked like we sometimes joke about the way they would sell tickets back in those days. If there was such a thing as a fire marshal at this point in time, just those people looked like they were stacked on top of each other. People sitting in like the aisleways and shit. I did laugh at a lot of the shenanigans, like a ref bump in a cage match. That shit always makes me laugh. That's Lawler 101 right there.
But also, guess who learned from it? Guy we're talking about.
That's right.
Yep.
Oh yeah, the guy we're talking about never overbooked a cage match or never overbooked us any sort of main event
Exactly.
at any point in time. But yeah, I love the heel audacity where he throws the powder through the cage door into Lawler's face, and I popped huge when the Big Don Tommy Rich came out. But the biggest thing is like at the end there, Tommy Rich comes out, lands I think 2 really gnarly pile drivers where he just does the Foley where he pulls the trunks and then spikes him down. The thing, and to your point, Joe, leading into this, it becomes a scene, and when you've watched enough wrestling matches and fights or what have you as we have, you know the difference between, oh, I'm supposed to boo this guy, so I will, and there's like a palpable tension at the end of this match that is like, okay, if they don't let off, something very bad could happen here.
Yeah.
It makes it very unique to the point where I think Heyman kind of knows it, because when he gets in the ring, he's doing he's jumping up and down and shit, and he collects Lawler's hair and puts it in a bag, and they're kind of like, all right, it's probably the time to hit the back now, and it's it obviously didn't become, like when Vader squashed Inoki or anything like that, but watching this, you can sense there's like potential danger in the air there towards the end of it.
Yeah, and there are people, as you mentioned, trying to get into the cage, right? Is a real, this is a chaotic scene. Yeah, the heat for this, Alex, honestly reminded me of Buddy Matthews in Melbourne, where it's just, all or nothing. Tonight's the night. From a Paul Lee point of view, the powder is pretty much his involvement in it. It's a cage match, right? But you do get to see him working kind of the apron, what the equivalent of the apron here.
He doesn't have much space to move because of how close the cage is to the crowd and everything. Yeah. And
luckily he appears to weigh like 125 pounds here.
Yeah.
Literally no other version of Paul Lee could have been in this. I don't think he could have fit in this spot, respectfully.
He would have had to blade his belly, but
yeah, like because you're right. He's basically like leaning against the cage to fit in. Like, it's quite the ordeal. Oracle, we texted very briefly about this last night. This is some pro wrestling right here, isn't it, brother?
Oh, brother, this is. It don't get any better than this, Like, hometown guy, everything on the line, hair on the line, heel stick, promos before the damn match.
Yep.
The production calling Randy Hales, no relation, sadly. Randy Hale without the S. Lance Russell continuously calling Paul Heyman Paulie Dangerly, which was stopping me every time he'd say it. Like the punches, the kicks, the blood. Lawler does his great post shot. He takes a posting better than anybody in the history of wrestling. Nobody takes a posting better than him. Tommy Rich coming out from under the ring. The post match with the hair. Heyman running around with a bag of hair. Just leaping around like an annoying asshole. It's especially annoying because, he's this Yankee down in the South with these, two assholes that are, cheating and cutting Lawler's hair and gotta love the post-match promo where Lance Russell goes backstage to interview him and Tommy Rich sitting there, all right now, Lance Russell, now you listen here, shouting and being the great Tommy Rich that he is, and pointing out that they never know they didn't think to look under the ring, did they, Lance Russell? They didn't think to look under the ring, and he's saying all this shit, and Heyman's like doing like the gigged out like face, shaking the the bag with the hair. It's interesting to see Heyman. It's interesting to see Tommy Rich kind of carry the mic work here.
Yeah.
And Heyman's very early on here. And he has the characterization down. And At this point, I bet he could cut a good promo, and if we would go and watch the stuff from the studios, I bet he does cut a few good ones. But it is kind of fascinating. This is the very first big time program for Heyman, and it kind of shows that, you know, he's great in terms of his physical, you know, characterization. But you know, there's not a lot of promo work from Paulie here. Which I thought was an interesting tidbit. It kind of goes to show you that he was kind of in some ways, obviously, you know, you always want your managers to cut promos, and again, he was, but it's interesting, and it's also Tom. I mean, Tommy's going to eat up a whole damn promo segment if he's there, you know.
Right.
But it's just interesting to see that, you know, he was almost learning the ropes with these guys, you know, in terms of cutting a promo and you know, running an angle and whatnot.
And, you know, to that point, I think that opens the door to like, and it's probably not the right show to have the conversation, but that kind of highlights how different the industry was, right? In the sense that like a guy with this experience level is having this experience, right? Like in this ain't, you know, whatever the, I don't know what the modern equivalent to this would be, but it would not be in front of a crowd like this. And, you know, with a worker like Lawler, with Austin Idol alongside him and Tommy Rich involved. I think it says a lot about this kind of time in wrestling is a fascinating time to break in because, you know, these places are still, they still exist in 87, even if they're not long for the world in this form. I mean, you mentioned already the last big smash hit feud they have.
Because the boom's already happened, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like these places beyond. It allowed guys like this to have an incredible experience. It's, I mean, it's unfathomable for a guy who's like brand new in the role to be standing ringside watching Austin Idol and Jerry Lawler bleed in front of this crowd. Yeah. Austin Idol was so good here. When he puts Lawler's face against the cage, look at him now, you know, and he's firing a punch. Oh, like tremendous pro wrestling. And a great place to start. Literally feels like a different thing. I don't even mean this in like a spiteful way, but this feels like a different thing altogether to the last match, right? Which kind of captures Paulie's career. Like they're like different worlds. It's hard to even compare. And I enjoy both of them, so I'm not knocking it, but it's different. As mentioned, the new Midnight Express, which would ultimately lead him to the, I guess, would it be, has Turner bought it by that point? When they shoot the big angle where Cornette gets produced? What month is that? What time of year is that?
That's in '88 because the original Midnight Express originally they start in '87 in AWA, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Okay, so because that's the thing with that feud is the original Midnights versus the Midnights is like kind of snake bit by like power changes, right? Like the Booker changes, and then it kind of becomes a mess. But you do get Paulie and Cornette opposite each other. Cornette as the babyface. They have a match, in which Paulie again reveals his incredible ability to get physical and throw bombs. Before we get into any more Paul Heyman, there's a great question here, and I haven't got the answer. I just got here, not sure what to do with the like button. It's a really good question. Colt's not sure either. Bob, any ideas?
Yeah, you're going to smash that like button unless you did the first time, then leave it be.
Leave it be. And if you didn't hear Bob to say, if you've already pushed it twice, now you have to wait, right, Bob, until we do it a third time. Yeah. Don't touch it.
Odd numbers.
Yeah, we're looking for odd numbers here, folks. All right. So yeah, that run, and like it isn't what it could have been. I think it could have been a real hit, to be honest with you, that feud, and it didn't become what it could have. But you do get that first angle where Cornette goes like coast to coast and pours in the studio, which is memorable. Later, and this is something that really is fascinating to look back on now. Later, Paul Lee would, wind up alongside the Samoan SWAT team, which is like, my God, brother, the history there, right? Now, as he stands at ringside and watches, Roman and the Usos and all of the above. Wild to ponder. Also, we should note in that run, because we're going to talk about obviously shortly, he and Jim Ross for the first time do commentary together. And that starts their very interesting relationship in which like their friendship is almost built on Paulie actively antagonizing Jim to pop himself. And Jim just kind of go, well, he's good at his job, It's I don't really get it, but it's their thing and it pops me. I love them both in that regard. And he is fired. I believe the story is he did like a worked shoot promo and Ric Flair fired him on the spot for this, I believe. And that is ultimately like the kind of his departure is like the kayfabe fuel for Dangerous Alliance, right? It's like he's going to destroy WCW. So again, we have to stress this, and this is why I made a point of it early. Is like this guy is like 3 or 4 years into the business and is making enemies with Jerry Lawler and Ric Flair. Like, this dude was never going to just be a normal wrestling manager who stood at ringside, did his thing. Like, he was always going to end up being a significant part of the business. So, anything before we get to the Dangerous Alliance and WarGames, is there any points you guys would like to make regarding that middle ground of Midnight Express, Samoan SWAT team, anything at all? If not, we'll proceed. I just wanted to. We'll do match recommendations later, I guess. But go on, Alex. What are you going to say?
The build and like the Great American Bash '89 with the WarGames match that went into that. He was obviously a central part of that.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We'll at the end of this act, we'll do the match recommendations. But I just wanted to I guess that would be the best place to talk about that. Dangerous Alliance, obviously a huge deal. Something that's still to this day. So that's actually has become kind of hardcore fan canon in a way that probably outweighs like how long the actual run was, because they're really the Dangerous Alliance for like 6 months, really. A large stretch of it is just like pieces of it are still hanging on, right? And you have the Medusa feud is like the blow off of the Dangerous Alliance officially, I think, which is hilarious. But you won't be surprised to know that's because Paulie was again making friends as he always did.
You think about that, Joe? Like, I was thinking about the other day, like Mikey Whipwreck and Tajiri is a tag team I love, and they were together for like 4 months. But in my mind, it was like the length of the Bloodline. How do you think people, like 10 years from now, are people going to like think of the Bloodline like it was something that lasted 15 years?
I honestly don't think we're even prepared for like that. Will be the thing, right? For like fans that grew up on it, everything will be compared to the Bloodline. I truly believe that too, and that would be hilarious. Like, I like a lot of the Bloodline stuff. It will be an interesting experience. But when like for us, if someone says, "Oh, they're doing an NWO angle," it's like, well, hold on.
Yeah,
that will be like someone will do a cutscene angle, and it'll be like the Bloodline. No, don't you dare bring up Solo Sikoa when watching these young guns grapple. Like it's just. It's
I think
dude. Yeah.
I think we're literally approaching the Bloodline thing being longer than what the agreed upon Attitude Era bookmarks are.
Yeah.
And like if we were getting ahead of ourselves. That there are obviously misses, but like a lot of that stuff has hit like resoundingly, like especially with their audience. Like I've liked some of it, a lot of it actually, but even more of it is hit with their audience. We'll definitely discuss that. The Dangerous Alliance.
Oh yeah, there. When we get to the point that there's a lot of Heyman to get into the discussion there. So
yeah, because it's pretty obvious. I think that he's like booking philosophy has evolved in a way that. I'm not sure is as in line with the hardcore fan as it used to be. You know what I'm saying? We'll get to the cinema and
that, or he realizes this is his last meal ticket, so he's trying to make it last as long as possible.
Maybe that will be our final conversation here. Dangerous Alliance. Arn Anderson, Bobby, and Larry Zbyszko, ravishing Rick Rude, stunning Steve Austin. We'll do this right now, folks. Last month's program was, of course, about ravishing Rick Rude. If you'd like to hear more about that, go check that out. We cover his 92 in great detail there. They are opposite the all-star babyface group, the Sting Squadron of Dustin Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, Ricky Steamboat, Sting, and Barry Windham. May 17th, 1992, Wrestle War 92. Again, I mentioned it earlier. Paul Heyman was a significant part of this year's WarGames match. Absolutely absurd to ponder. But this is, in my view, the ultimate WarGames match. I believe this to be the greatest WarGames match. I think this perfected the original formula. It's a match that's often referenced. People just go WarGames 92, right? And people kind of know what that means and what that entails. One of the most staggering collections of talent you'll ever see. The heat, that classic, hot tag heat formula and rotation that you get in WarGames. I don't know if it was ever better than this. Alex, WarGames 92, brother, take it away.
Dare I say it used to be better. Dude, how awesome does that heel team look when they come through the curtain all like in a row? Like, it's just ridiculous, and like what you like. I'm not telling you to do that, but like you see Rick Rude here, who we talked about, leading the way, and Austin looks fantastic. Was this the one and only night they were trying to get the name The Cruncher over for Larry Zbyszko? Because they say it about 40 times.
No, they were all in on that because that was the hand. Yeah, the broken hand. So the Cruncher was like, that was Larry's Larry's thing for a minute there, hilariously. The
I was
crunch.
thinking he and Medusa, unless someone called me out in the chat if I'm wrong. Aside from that, everyone on his team, he got a payday in ECW at some point in time. Obviously, Austin, Rick Rude, Bobby Eaton, he brought in 2000 to feud with C.W. Anderson briefly. But Arn, got that. So kind of cool to think of it from that perspective. Heel Team looks great. Heyman, we're talking about him. He gets the awesome moment where he's like fucking Lombardi's got him all huddled around and is going over the game plan and shit. And there's a great moment where the ref comes up to, I guess, explain the rules, and Larry Zbyszko goes, "What do you want?" to the referee. And Heyman's, apoplectic this entire match at ringside, even at the finish, doing the shit where he's shaking the cage door because Bobby Eaton ends up, submitting or surrendering, depending on your point of view with WarGames here. Yeah, to your point, Joe, what are we going to say about this that hasn't been said? It's so full of moments and one of the greater collections of a heel team against a babyface team. I mean, you got fucking Dustin Rhodes, Barry Windham, Ricky Steamboat, and Sting on the same team, for crying out loud. Come on, man. And that could not. It's funny it happens in '92 because it's that's like a blend. We're a few years removed from the Barry Windham feuding with Ric Flair. You're doing those Broadways every night, and we're just about where Dustin's going to become one of the big stars from a good guy perspective in the company, and Sting's obviously there. And then Nikita Koloff. This is like a spot guys call in WarGames matches when they Sting Nikita, he set that moment of the matchup. So I think from that perspective, it's pretty significant. Arn Anderson gets wedged at one point in between the two rings, which we saw this with Terry Funk and our Terry Funk Grin Grappler, but Barry's got him waist locked, like he's trying to repeatedly pile drive him in between the rings, and when the crowd becomes aware of what's going on, they lose their mind. This crowd is just on fire the entire match. And Austin and Dustin both have significant blade jobs in this match. And Arn as well. Arn, was always one of those guys that was really good about just a little blood, making it interesting. But he also gets his face raked against the cage, and there's absolutely no hands in front of it. He's just like fucking getting shredded like a cheese grater on there. So all great. The other thing to call out here is that for some reason Jesse Ventura, I guess, he was mad at Ricky Steamboat about something because he takes a shot at him being an adulterer. He's like, he's calling out. He could be calling out to any of his girlfriends here in the area, which could be anywhere between 10 and 20. And then Tony Schiavone jumps on it, trying to no, he has a wife. He's got a girlfriend too, and it's a very strange moment in the match. But Jesse is finally back in our lives once again, and his commentary lived up to everything I could have hoped for. And he hasn't changed, never changed, Jesse. But yes, this is the best WarGames match, with the possible exception of the Blackout versus Team Cash from Cage of Death 6. That would be the other contender. But yeah, come on. Wrestle War 92. This is as good as it gets, man.
Dude, I always love Gary Michael Capetta. I consider WarGames to be a pretty simple match. I don't know about you guys. It's never once confused Papa Holbert, which is pretty impressive. And Gary Michael Capetta reads the Bible to explain how this match works. And then you won't believe what happens next, folks. Another wrestler will enter. He will be from the same team, and he's like, this goes on forever, dude. It pops me every time. You mentioned Arn Anderson. This is the biggest compliment I can give this match. Arn Anderson's great in this. He's not even an MVP candidate in this to me, which is crazy because he wins MVP in every other WarGames he's ever been in.
Oh, he's the greatest WarGames worker ever, is Arn Anderson.
Easily. And in this, he's not even to me a top 4 guy, and that says more about the 4 guys than him. Unbelievable.
The last point, but I forgot to call out that I need to give praise here too is, and this was a WCW thing that Vince never adopted, and Triple H won't. The idea of a match like this with as much chaos finishing in a way that isn't meant for the entire audience to see. Now, in these WarGames matches they do, whatever the finale is going to be, it's just those two guys, and everyone else is like
Campbell
down.
just like
Yeah. Here, Sting does the right thing. He puts a shoot hold on Bobby Eaton trying to break his arm because he got hit in the arm with the turnbuckle post. And when the bell rings, the crowd doesn't know what happened until the ring announcer says that Bobby Eaton submitted, and that's magic in that, and it makes it seem, more genuine than just everyone laying on the ground and going, "Oh, well, I don't fucking know." Solo Sikoa does some acting.
Nonetheless, this is just glory. Oracle WarGames 92, brother.
Oh,
what
yeah.
a piece of business. My God.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for our main event of the evening.
Fucking Gary Michael Capetta doing his thing.
That's pretty good, dude. Yeah.
And like
That was excellent, actually.
Yeah.
Oracle, give us This Is Sting. Come on.
This is Sting.
Oracle, quickly, because you read the Penza book. How great is the Gary Michael Capetta tale of Penza like victory lapping about how hot WCW is, and old Gary just goes, "Enjoy it while it lasts, son. Enjoy it while it lasts."
Yeah, this is the greatest WarGames match ever. Still holds up. Man, I always forget the Gusher Dustin. I mean, he's got like a 3/4 crimson mask. There's like one cheekbone that's not covered, but the rest is like, and it's like the way that it's like splattered looks fucking awesome. And like he's got like blood all over his tights and shit. Just so many things to talk about, like Steamboat's hot tag in there, Sting's hot tag, Medusa climbing the cage, Sting going up the, trying to go up there after, the heat, the blood, like Arn getting rammed in, rammed in between the rings, the gorilla press slam into the cage, the atomic drop, where I think it was Austin's head who hits the top of the cage.
Yeah.
Just the brilliant finish. Eaton came in here shoot hurt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which is
he couldn't do
hilarious.
much, which is a shame because Bobby's
Right.
an incredible bumper, and he would have done some crazy shit in here.
This would have been better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was already the best WarGames match ever, and if Bobby was healthy, it would have been even better.
Oracle, I forgot to mention during my part, but man, what a different worker Steve Austin was before the neck injury, man.
Oh, dude, he might be the best guy in the match.
He does that
agree.
rebound flying clothesline off the ropes.
Yeah.
I Steve. This may surprise you. Steve Austin figured out how to be a good worker until his very last match. But like watching him here, I'm just like, good God, man.
It's interesting for this purpose because I think he's the best guy in the other Steve match we do too. But he looks in agony doing it in that match.
Right.
He's so quick here, man. Good God.
He's insane. Insane motor would be the appropriate term, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also because Jesse's like critical of Dustin before the match. I'm not sure Dustin has the experience to go into this match and hang in there with these guys.
Who used the chair? Rhodes.
I need to go back and watch that match with.
Mate, he's
commentary.
Brilliant on commentary. I couldn't believe how good he was, to be honest, after all those years.
But is that show on Peacock?
For now.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah.
Okay, no.
For now, anything's in doubt.
Yeah. But because I mean, the entire Raw catalog is gone in about 2 weeks, so yeah, it's shameful. Sorry to bring that up, but
Bob's fault.
yeah, this is I think it's when Dustin comes in, he has that great moment where he's like throwing fisticuffs with somebody. Is Dustin is doing that? Incredible pop, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Of course, the famous thing, Nikita moment. I mean, it's just I could go on and on. I mean, it's amazing. As far as Paulie goes, the sort of intervals of huddles with him are always awesome. Like every time it pops, like that's what in theory would expect a manager to do with a group of his guys. Would be to like have a fucking huddle. You know what I mean? Like in a fucking WarGames cage match.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He does have the moment afterwards too, where he acts like he's going to charge Zbyszko for costing him the match, and when Larry turns towards him, whoa!
Yeah, that's tremendous, tremendous stuff. Bobby, WarGames 92, right? I assume you've seen this before, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. Oracle and Alex covered a ton of it, but it's a phenomenal piece of business, man. Heyman comes out with the phone and the big sheet of plans and all that, and it's just from there on, it's a hell of a time. It's what WarGames should be. They didn't bother with the weapons. It wasn't 45 minutes long. It's good stuff.
It is I think it's like 23 minutes long.
Yeah, it is. Like, it's crazy.
Hamlet reviews, when he reviewed this match, talked about how like Dustin and Austin kind of make a statement as the next like big baby face and heel of if WCW went another way than what it went, obviously, brother. Is when you're looking through that lens, like Austin and Dustin, I actually think are the stars of the show here, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
Steamboat's unbelievable. The reaction Rick Rude gets when he enters the cage, that kind of like, oh shit, like that says a lot about what we discussed in terms of how Rude was like a badass in WCW. How great is it that everyone comes in and does a hot tail? Even the heels coming in clean up, other than Larry, who just walks into a Dustin Blitz and is just like, oh shit, he's immediately in trouble. I love that. You mentioned it, Alex. The shot of the guys walking out is iconic, gets gift, and it's been posted all the time. And I think if you would say what's the most memorable, pre-ECW Paul Heyman, I think it would say the game planning that we've all discussed, right? I think that'd probably be it. So yeah, an absolute masterpiece. Just one of the best WCW matches ever, and I think the best WarGames match ever. So tremendous. If you haven't seen this match, I'm almost sad we spoiled some of it for you, but you have to go and watch it. The crowd, the excitement, the talent, Jesse Ventura. I don't really get much better than that.
That's right.
Let's call out some other matches from pre-ECW Paul Lee. So, obviously, it goes without saying the Rick Rude matches we just covered, right? Like, obviously, he wasn't there, but the generally the stuff we discussed, like the Dangerous Alliance 8-man, all of that stuff. That goes without saying. Alex, is there any others you'd like to circle, brother?
Yeah, definitely Great American Bash 89, the WarGames match from that show. Was Heyman the manager when they did that flip turn where Cornette joined the Midnight Express again? I can never remember if he was ringside for that, like where
with the dynamic dudes.
Yeah.
Nah.
What was the set of circumstances that made him and Cornette have the tuxedo match?
That was from the original Midnights versus the Midnights. That was,
okay. All right.
You're thinking of when Cornette like offers his services to the dynamic dudes and then turns on them and the Midnights turn heel when the place goes crazy. That's what you're thinking.
Okay, yeah. I'm thinking
I think Paul Lee's fired by that point, I think.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. He did some commentary that was good, and like a lot of what you'll find from this era is novelty, like when he managed Mean Mark Callis, and it's just kind of funny that he's managing the Undertaker here, and he had a lot of guys that he was, that it's a much different time. Like you'll see that with Cornette and the WWF, like in those early Monday Night Raw days, where it's just this Rolodex of like, well, send him out there with Paulie and see what happens, and so you'll see him across if you ever get the whole catalog of Saturday Night or Worldwide or any of the syndicated shit, you'll see him managing some people that you'll be like, huh? But what I can say for him at this point in time, which is probably why there's not too much to recommend in terms of things he was directly involved in, is what would become the defining quality of his career is when that red light was on, he was like, all right, how can I improve my situation right now at the expense of anybody else? And that's what, to your point, it ended up rubbing a lot of people the wrong way and found him kind of, drifting afloat until Todd Gordon pulled him out of the water.
Indeed, yes. It's. I think there is definitely. We mentioned earlier.
Or Eddie Gilbert, rather. Excuse me. Sorry.
There you go. No, you're good. Who he also managed, right? He did stuff with Eddie Gilbert when he went back to Memphis, I believe. We mentioned Stephanie McMahon's her own take on Paul Lee, and as much as we laugh at it, it isn't like it's a Stephanie exclusive to find Paul Lee to be excruciating to do business with, right? I mean, that is kind of a trend, and he's mellow. Some would say he's mellowed out. I would suggest he's just got better at playing the game.
Yep.
But
pun intended.
Nonetheless, Oracle, yeah, indeed. Oracle, any matches from pre-ECW, Paul Lee guys that you'd like to shout out before we move on?
God. Anything from the original Midnights that big matches from AWA or Crockett. What the hell are the AWA matches from there? It's gonna bother me if I can't remember exactly what those matches are. But oh well.
Working with Vern is just the visual that pops me.
There's also the any Samoan SWAT team squash is fucking
squash.
Awesome,
Yeah, get the squashes.
I mean, it's tremendous. That would be my two main wrecks.
Yeah, the biggest miss of the Bloodline era. I'm aware it's done quite well and been pretty successful, but we needed more squashes, dude.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine booking Tongaloa in real matches and not just having him dump guys on their head. Come on, what are we doing here? Nonetheless, the Medusa program is Paul Lee's swan song. He does a sexist rant at Halloween Havoc, which obviously the content of is but his delivery on that is honestly incredible. I mean, the reaction it gets from the people and the way he works himself.
Dude.
Yeah. And Medusa, as you said, Oracle kicks the shit out of him, and he ends up with that weird Michael Hayes alliance is his last thing. I don't think Bill Watts was a big fan, right? I think is the story, and that's why Dangerous Alliance was kind of de-emphasized. There is then, Alex, do you recall this lore about the Jim Crockett thing that almost came to? Remember that? Where it was Crockett was looking to start something up in 93, maybe?
I can never remember the name of those shows, but some pictures, Roy Lucier, who, if you don't follow him on Twitter, is a tremendous pro wrestling asset. He posted some pictures recently and I'm forgetting, but someone on Instagram. So basically Jim Crockett tried to do this super indie before its time where they were running shows at the fucking Manhattan Center before Monday Night Raw ran there. And Paul was involved with that because I think that's where he linked back up with Terry Funk, if I'm not mistaken, because one of the matches they were running on those shows in 93 was Sabu versus Terry Funk in the Manhattan Center, which is just insane to think about, but yeah, that's it's just a different landscape now, but the independent scene in 92 was basically a bunch of fat local dudes, and then maybe King Kong Bundy would come through and work a match for you, that type of shit. And so people were trying to make something of them at that point in time, and that Jim Crockett idea, which was going to run, and this is while TWA is going on as well with Todd Gordon, working the tri-state area up there. Jim Crockett thought that maybe he could make this first super indie, and Heyman tried to get involved with that, but then eventually got reconnected with Eddie Gilbert and met Todd Gordon, and I think the rest is history on that one.
Yeah, and I'll stick with you on this. I think you're the best person to ask, but before we do, the story goes that Paul Lee was kind of frustrated with the trends of pro wrestling, right? And he kind of felt that it was stale, that needed updating and so on and so forth. And obviously that would come to life with ECW. Alex, our first match here, our only ECW representation on the lineup, was your pick. And
Real quick.
Yes, sir. Yes, mate.
So I just wanted to clear this up. So funny enough, the original Midnight Express match from the AWA, the Lawler feud carried over into AWA.
Oh,
and it was original Midnight Express versus Lawler and Dundee in AWA.
What?
Yeah.
That sounds incredible, if we're being honest. I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds
Yeah.
spectacular. I need to see
Late
that.
87. So October
Oh
30th,
my.
87 was the match on there. It's
Wow.
it's a great match.
I'm sure. Yeah. Oh, I'd
87.
love
Oh,
to
okay,
see
so
that.
that's at the point everyone was kind of thrown in the towel and like, all right, we got to start banding together. Vince
Yep,
Jr. is
that's
running
what-
amok
yeah,
over
exactly.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. That went as well as you'd expect. July 16th, 1994, ECW Heatwave, Sabu, Shane Douglas. Now, this was, Alex, if you can, explain the process between picking this, because this is actually Paulie as a manager, is
Mhm.
important, right? Which obviously would not be a thing forever in ECW, to put it lightly. But in addition, can you kind of bridge the gap from what we just discussed to like where we're at in July 94 as we meet the match that's going to decide the future of the sport here?
Future of the sport.
Go for it, Alex.
Heatwave 94, the first tape I ever bought off the internet a few years after the fact, but this was the first tape that because I had to see the Funks versus Public Enemy in a barbed wire match. But anyway, yeah, so we talked about, and shout out to Jumanji Hunter in the chat there. It was the World Wrestling Network, where those series of shows that were promoted. And yeah, Heyman at this point is just what you said, and rightly knows that there is a market out there for a different style of wrestling. And I think the crowd from this, and something a lot of people don't respect about ECW, because when people think ECW, what they think is the Hammerstein Ballroom. That's what they've been conditioned to think. They think that. They think, you know, maybe some of the like Heatwave 98. They think of these very specific instances of ECW based on just, you know, what the WWE version of history has taught them. Dude, the ECW was that fucking shithole in Philly with just a bunch of dudes that like knew it was fake but wanted to still be entertained by the notion of pro wrestling. And Heyman got that, and he starts building on it. So what he was doing, he's like drifting. He's basically in the water, and he's got two hooks out, and he's just doing this repeatedly, trying to find out what's going to fucking stick. He hooks up with Eddie Gilbert, who at that point, Eddie was booking ECW, which was Eastern Championship Wrestling. And this is, of course, what it morphed into from TWA, which is Todd Gordon's original promotion. Eddie Gilbert gets pushed out of the picture. Heyman starts working with Todd. After what we're about to talk about is when Heyman takes over the company and rebrands it Extreme Championship Wrestling. But at this point in time, Heyman's there, like helping with the direction of the company, but also the big thing is he's an on-screen character. He's a manager because he's the guy who led the Dangerous Alliance to WarGames and shit. And so, yeah, Heatwave 94, pretty big show for them. And yeah, that's what you said. The idea of this match was, I'm losing track of my dates now. I don't know if this was before or after the triple threat match with Funk that like people lost their shit.
That one was in February.
Thank you. Yes, so that was the match that got the promotion all the attention, and Funk was like, the veteran, and this was going to be what decided the future of not just the company but the sport. And this is Heyman's role at this point in time. And this is classic Heyman. He was a manager who had a bodyguard. So he was Sabu's manager, because the idea with Sabu right now is that he wasn't what we know of Sabu to become, but he was this fucking like, they literally put the Hannibal Lecter mask on him, and they would wheel him out in a gurney, and then
he ran through a wall on this shit or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah, and they just like unleashed him into the public. And so Heyman was like his handler. But then if you fucked with Heyman, you had to deal with 911, which we'll get to 911, because there is still a place in professional wrestling for motherfuckers like 911 who can do one thing, and that's all they need to do. But anyway, it's clear already that Paul Heyman, Paulie Dangerously here, sees Shane Douglas as like a potential cornerstone of a promotion.
A franchise player, if you will.
Really? Oh, that's where that came from. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, take from that what you will. But this, am I kicking off here? Are we talking about the match now? Is that what we're getting into?
If you would like to, before you do, because I think you say right, you lead with this, because I think Bob's going to get very aggressive in a moment. I can see it in his face, but we should. I mean, you explained that wonderfully. And to even just, I mean, when was the infamous throwing of the end? That was like a month after this, right? It was August, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like to give you like, I think people's ECW lore starts there, doesn't it? Right. And like they then, so that's, I mean, it gives you an idea of the timeline. But Alex, take it away. Get into the match. Shane Douglas here. Kind of a signal of things to come, good and bad, I would put it personally. What did you make of this?
I, as like bits will tell, and also genuinely love Shane Douglas. I'll be a bit hyperbolic about things at times because I love committing to a bit. I hope no one in the chat or on this panel would disagree with me that in 1999 Triple H went, I want to do that, and took basically the entire franchise gimmick and made that his own. Triple H had a bit more success in the industry than Shane Douglas, but
it's close.
So one thing with Paul Heyman with gimmicks, especially in ECW, was it always took a little bit of fucking finessing because things were way too much on the nose when it was just directly what he wanted. And here is a great example of that, because his idea was that Shane Douglas is going to be our star quarterback. So Shane Douglas's faction at the time was called the Offensive Line. And, you know, eventually when that morphed into like with Francine and called her the head cheerleader, kind of made a bit more sense because Francine was also a natural. But so the funniest part about Shane Douglas here, though, is, and I was texting you all this, I forgot there was this period where they like Paul Heyman wanted him to be like Bret Hart in the ring instead of just eventually what he became. And when he had his most success was when he was the dominant world champion, which like the franchise Shane Douglas character is basically Paul Heyman. And I'm talking about 97, 98, 99 world champion Shane Douglas. That's like, if you put it through the Paul Heyman filter, that's what like Nick Bockwinkel was. That's like, you know, he says fuck and shit and does all this stuff and cheats to win matches. And don't get me wrong, dude, 98 Shane Douglas gassed beyond mobility with Francine on his side is one of the greatest world title acts of all time. But here he's still like, there's this incredible part in the match where they're trying to talk, or Joey Styles is trying to talk about how great he is and he can do everything. He can do high flying, and then he does a double axe handle off the second rope, like, you know, and he does an STF at one point, and yeah, they were basically trying to make him Bret Hart, which love you, Shane, you are not Bret Hart. And the more like fascinating part about this match, especially this is where Heyman comes into it because he's doing the pounding on the apron and shit. Fellas, we've watched some Sabu matches over the years. Traditional babyface Sabu is not a winning formula. When Sabu's like trying to fight out of rest holds and shit and, you know, work like these plucky comebacks, that's not what people pay to see. But I'll tell you what people were paying to see was Sabu, because this dude is busting out slingshot 450s and like acai moonsaults in 1994 when the shit on TV is like, this is still like Bastion Booger and what was WCW? This was before Hogan, or was this already Hogan? Was the Dungeon of Doom already starting?
No, Hogan just came in.
This was the same weekend, Hogan.
Yeah.
This was the same night before Hogan won the title.
Yeah.
But still, it's like the brother shit and whatnot. So I had a good time with this match, but it's more of one of those things. If I could see all those dudes in the crowd ranging from ages 30 to 37 that are just there, like sitting with their arms folded, I could get why this is like appealing to them. Because Sabu, you know, if you've read Bret Hart's book ever, that's all like wrestling was talking about in like 94, 95 was like Sabu. And I had texted y'all of the idea that guy never really became like a huge star. Like his uncle's a great case. If Sabu had come along like in the 70s, he would have been a massive territory star. Mm-hmm. And just watching him here, he's doing shit that like no one else was doing. Heyman's good and active on the outside. Shane even hits a really, really beautiful flying elbow off the top rope. He would eventually be outdone by another Shane in this episode, but it looks good. My other notes here, there's an Eric Watts name drop on commentary, which I lost my fucking mind at, that Joey Styles said that Eric Watts brought the STF to America. But yeah, it's a funny finish. It's a very Heyman finish of the one guy's too hardcore for his own good, so he puts himself out of the match. And then we get some Heyman afterwards, in which he faces off with Curtis Hughes and is selling some punches, and then we get 911 coming in there and wreaking havoc, giving choke slams to everybody in sight. 911, just because I don't know how many more times. If we do a Rey Mysterio one of these, I'm probably going to fight that we do the Rey Mysterio 911 versus the Eliminators match. But aside from that, I can't see him coming up again. There's a place for guys in wrestling that just look cool and big and do one thing, and it works really well. He would come out to the ring to Frankenstein by the Edgar Winter band. Like that's wrestling through and through. Not the best match we've ever covered on Grin Grappler, but I think this is a great match for the Heyman episode because even though he's not in full power yet, he's in the process of manipulating these pieces that would become Sabu and Shane Douglas are cornerstones of ECW, man. Yeah. And that's like, you can see where the ideas of these characters are going to go with this match.
Yeah, it highlights immediately one of his great skills as a booker is the way he packages talent, right? And like the things he highlights. But even when, as you said, he goes too on the nose, he has such a clear vision of like, this is what a Shane Douglas should be presented as. So much so that I'm not sure Shane Douglas matches the way he's being described. To your point about him not quite being Bret Hart, not quite being Bret Hart. Bob, in the Grin Grappler group chat, the Oracle of Wrestling mentioned the franchise Shane Douglas. You did a very blunt thumbs down reaction, and I couldn't wait to see the Lord. If there's anything to this, or it's just you popping yourself. But what did you think of this?
I mean, I've been watching the 1994 stuff, so I've seen everything before this. And Shane Douglas does have some good matches. I know he's going to develop into someone that I enjoy, but yeah, this wasn't good. Like, well. It was like 15 minutes, and he's just like working holds for like 8 of the 15. It's just, I don't know, man. It's like Alex laid it out. Like Sabu does so much cool shit, and he does a little bit of it in this match, but it wasn't what they should have done there. And I like the triple threat with Terry Funk quite a bit. It's an hour long, but it's very good. But yeah, this just didn't work.
Well, I'm torn on it. I think psychologically, it actually gets a lot right in the idea of like pure classical wrestler versus wild man, and Sabu taking these big risks and like, the different results that they produce. I just think it's like terribly uneven because of those holds, and it kind of like there's no rhythm to the match. There's good ideas in the match, but it's one of those matches that needed an edit, and I think that would become a trend with Shane Douglas in every which way, someone who needed an edit. I think he has that awesome catch powerbomb at one point. I think Steve Austin nailed it with Shane Douglas, which is like he was a great babyface worker and a great heel promo, but he couldn't like marry the two. Like he couldn't do one on the other side. I think that's completely because he's worked, dude. Like if you watch his stuff with Steamboat as a babyface the year before this, like very, very capable wrestler, very, very capable. But
do you know what song he was coming out to at this point in time?
Is this when he's doing Perfect Strangers or not?
No, this is pre-Perfect Strangers, which when you hear that song, you got to put the 3 up. But this is when he was doing Tina Turner's Simply the Best.
Oh, my God. There you go. He totally believed it, too.
Oh, yeah.
Had he begun the Ric Flair promos at this point? Or is
okay, so I streamed the show, and he cuts a promo before the match that I did watch. He didn't call him Dick Flair, but he did say, tonight, I'm going to prove that the future of wrestling is neither one of those dried up raisins, Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan. He wasn't quite cut the fucking music yet either, but
or the sport.
The sport. Yeah.
He was trying his best. Oracle, did you like this match?
It was okay. The stuff that popped me about this were like the kind of the ECW stuff, like Cat Guy in the crowd, Heyman with his like ECW manager get up, Sabu running to a fucking wall or something to come into the come into the ring. The finish was insane. Of course, I was going to mention it, and Alex already did, but Joey Styles claiming that Eric Watts was the inventor of the STF.
He's excruciating, man. I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Also, The reason I bring this up is because, oh boy, we'll know there's multiple cameras in one of the other matches that we watched. This is a one camera shoot. They just have the hard cam this entire match.
Brother.
Yeah.
And of course, the finish is insane. Where like Sabu tries some crazy shit and goes to a fucking table on the floor, and like,
well, it's a vertically standing table that he tries to acai through.
Yeah.
So of course he just bounces off of it.
Psychotic. There's also a great moment where Sabu does like some fucking topic on Hilo or some shit, and there's like a fan at the guardrail who like takes a bump because they're terrified to get hit, and he like flies back into his chair, which is like classic ECW fan horse shit. Because with their fans, they either don't get out of the way or like flee in terror. It's like it's like a mix of both there in the arena. So it's always entertaining to see those aspects. But yeah, it's just this was interesting to see, just in the sense that it was, as Alex pointed out, they're right at the cusp of Heyman really kind of taking full control of the company and morphing it into what we all sort of know ECW as. And 911 pops me because there's a great story that he actually wanted to be like a wrestler and have like bell-to-bell matches. And like Heyman was like, no. And then he left and went to WCW and was Tombstone.
Yeah.
Saturday night for a while. And then he eventually came back and made like a cameo appearance or two, right? In ECW, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he like worked a match with Ron Simmons that stunk up the joint. Like that was like, if I'm not mistaken, that's what happened. Like he wanted to, if it wasn't Ron Simmons, it was on a show that Ron Simmons wrestled there. Like he wanted to have a match and he did. And of course, there's a Sandman interview. I told Paul, don't let him fucking wrestle. He's going to stink the joint up. And then,
God bless.
Where's my Denny's?
Yeah. That's how Kane got over, dude. Like people don't like ever stop and process that. All Kane did for 4 months was chokeslam people and tombstone them. Like that's all he did. You have a big jacked up dude come out there and obviously you'd have to fucking upgrade his look a little bit because 911 and that looks like a trucker from a 94 comedy, but it's you just get a big dude come out to a cool song and chokeslam people. You start that shit tomorrow, it'll get over.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. This is very difficult to do because obviously we're taking a huge leap from like here to the Alliance will win. There's like 101 like ups and downs in that time. We'll get to our next match soon. Alex, how would be the best way to get from A to B on this? Because obviously we can't retell the story of ECW, and that's also something that's been well documented. Thankfully so. I'm glad it has been. I guess the questions would be, when would you say, if someone was watching this, they've never seen any ECW, because I've asked Oracle this before with the historical Oracle, I'll ask you, when do you think is a good jump on point? What would you say is the promotion's highest peak? And I guess where would be the jump off point? I mean, you stayed to the end. Would you recommend that? Give me like a sort of broad strokes on that. Go for it.
Oracle, feel free to jump in at any point in time. Mm-hmm. I would say like if we're just doing like fucking pins, like we're in a map, we're putting pins where it started as like, this is the shit, is the double dog collar match with the Pitbulls against Stevie Richards and Raven. The peak, it's so cliche, but maybe Heatwave 98, like to think that, or maybe Guilty as Charged 99, because that's when they paid off the big Taz. The longest, like the biggest build they ever did for a match in ECW because of its nature. The guys weren't there that long, but like Taz finally beating Shane Douglas at Guilty as Charged 99 was one of the biggest payoffs they ever did. And maybe Sabu and Taz as well. So the peak's somewhere in between there during the pay-per-view years, and then there was some good shit right even till the end.
Right.
Yeah.
The last, like Dreamer and CW Anderson's I Quit match is really good. I think of like the last great ECW match. Tajiri and Steve Corino at Hardcore Heaven 2000 comes to mind. Or
amazing match.
That was awesome. Yeah. That match is fucking awesome.
Because when they were still really hot, they were building both those guys. So that was like a match that,
because the houses were strong, like almost to the grave, right? Like
I would say summer of '95 through summer of '97 is the best 2-year like peak of the company in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then Heatwave 98 is the best pay-per-view.
Of course.
But I would also say Summer 99 to Summer 2000 is actually quite good in the ring.
Yeah.
Now, some of the storylines and stuff, but the in-ring is like really good because that's like with the Jury and Guido and
that's during the
Super
Jerry
crazy.
Lynn RVD series and shit.
yeah, like
So-
like that stuff's awesome. 98, I think, is actually a pretty because I've seen the entire ECW set from the Death Valley Driver board several years ago, and like 98 has a lot of good stuff, but like some of the booking and like it doesn't feel quite as they're like on a that's where they peaked business wise and sort of like everybody was watching by 98. But in terms of like what I actually think is the best, my opinion would be Summer 95 through Summer 97. And then as in like in ring, in terms of booking, Summer 95 to Summer 97, in ring would be Summer 99 to Summer 2000.
Yeah,
So-
because the talent
As
is.
Alex pointed out, in terms of their like kind of overall peak would probably be late 98, early 99 in terms of when
Mhm.
everybody had kind of finally recognized and discovered ECW.
Yeah.
Had these long-term bills like Taz beating Douglas for the title. RVD had been TV champ for
Almost 2 years.
yeah. I mean that stuff was huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get it twisted. If you watch, like, you'll find something to like from any of those pay-per-views. So we're not saying any of them are bad, but like also something that doesn't really get talked about that often. There's 3 documentaries about the rise and fall of ECW. There's one literally called The Rise and Fall of ECW. There's one called Forever Hardcore, which is yeah. And then there's one called Barbed Wire City, which is pretty excellent.
John.
Yes.
It's really good. Yeah.
One thing that doesn't get talked enough about in any of them, and if Paul was here with us right now, he would say, I don't know what you're talking about, is he seemed very interested in establishing a relationship with FMW that did not end up panning out. He, of course, brought over Hayabusa and Shizaki to wrestle RVD and Sabu at Heatwave 98. He tried and did get Onita over here, but didn't work out quite the way they were expecting it. And then, of course, that's where Tanaka and Mike Awesome came from. Like, he wanted to make them big stars. I don't know what the idea was. They did run that one co-promoted show in Japan, I believe Kurokan Hall, where it was ECW versus FMW.
Mhm.
But there was definitely
Christmas or right around Christmas of '98, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to repeat the verbiage, but there's a Dudley Boys shoot interview where they explain how Sandman laid a match out to some of the Japanese talent that was highly problematic. So if you can find that, it's entertaining. Anyway, I don't know what his idea was, but as we all know, FMW dissolved and whatnot. But I think he overestimated the value of Japanese talent in the United States at that point in time, which is fucking hilarious because Gabe Sapolsky still has a job in wrestling because he brought those Japanese talents over. So, you can make the argument that because Gabe obviously he was a disciple of Heyman and he worked for him in ECW. So he probably monitored that and was like, okay, we got to figure out a way to make this profitable.
Right.
But I think that's an interesting part of the company its last few years that's not focused on enough. Was Heyman had this great idea, but there just wasn't a market for it at the time because the internet wasn't nearly as big then as it would become in the years. So Heyman obviously has his battles with TNN. We go through all this that I mentioned, and then
I'm shooting right now.
This is a shoot. I'm pretty sure his last appearance on ECW television was when he smashed the phone against Cyrus's head in the Hammerstein Ballroom, a sold-out Hammerstein Ballroom. The last TV tapings and shit they ran were their last pay-per-view. That's the thing about ECW. That's always like, Ring of Honor, Matt Taven, world champion. They couldn't sell out the third row. Ring of ECW, its last pay-per-view, there wasn't a piece of paper left at the merch stand, and there wasn't a ticket left to be had. That's kind of always the fascinating part about it.
Tommy Dreamer and CW Anderson I Quit match fucking rules.
And RVD basically did that main event as a favor. Jerry Lynn too. That's why he's wrestling in fucking athletic shorts because he didn't even bring his gear to the show. But yeah, Heyman's last appearance was he paid off the network angle where he smashed Cyrus in the head. He looked awful. I'm not just talking because I'm a fan.
He had like 5 o'clock shadow bad, didn't he? And shit.
Yeah.
But he also looked like he had fucking jaundice, dude. His skin color was weird. Like he hadn't slept in a long time.
Blood clot, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah. And then to me, one of the sad things is always he wasn't at the last show. Like he had just thrown in the towel already. They ran that last house show because it was the last thing.
Pine Bluff, Arkansas, I believe, right? January 13th.
Pine Bluff, yeah. I don't know why I know this, but Michael Shane wrestled on that show. Matt Bentley of TNA fame. Yeah, when he was breaking into the and one of the most depressing things you'll ever see, because I've watched a fan cam of that show one time.
Oh yeah, the post-match promo.
And Sandman has a beer and he looks at the crowd. He goes, "This bud's for you," and then he pops it. And
Yeah, I've seen it.
So all right, that happens. Paul Heyman leaves all the guys in the trenches. He says he's going to LA to negotiate TV deals, and he's out there filming Rollerball. And then just ends up on Monday Night Raw, not having really told anybody that he was going to be there. God bless him in ultimate carny mode, and so Paul Heyman. I don't know if you all remember that first show. He's wearing the ECW ball cap when they introduced him at the ringside announce table, and we've seen it now. I love it. Before the show starts, Jim Ross tell him just follow me, kid. You'll be all right. But then on the actual broadcast, when Paul E introduces himself, it's Paul E dangerously, and the E's for extreme. They cut to the ramp, and whoever the fuck's coming out to start the show, and you hear Jim Ross go, "Well, I don't know what I did to deserve this, but here we go."
It's
March 2001 Raw.
It was the night after No Way Out 2001, because I believe that's when
right
King quit. Yeah, and that's God. It's now, Joe. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to steal your platform here, man, but WrestleMania 17 is regarded as the apex of the World Wrestling Federation, and to think about, with the exception of Steve Austin and The Rock, how in disarray everything else was in the build to that show. Triple H and Undertaker wasn't announced until 2 weeks before the show.
Yeah.
And the week they announced fucking Benny and Kurt Angle the week of, because Kurt Angle cut that promo where he said the gobbledy freaking gooker has a match and I don't.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember watching that. I remember them setting that match up live when I was a kid. The week before. Yeah.
So ECW folds after WCW, correct?
Well, I mean, officially, I guess. But
okay, so Heyman
would
would have
have
been on
bankruptcy before, right?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, ECW stopped running in January, right?
Yeah.
Was Heyman on the call when they did the simulcast?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That I didn't remember. So ECW. Whole point of this being is there's nothing to compare it to in modern wrestling, but the idea that 2 and 2B folded within all within the span of a month is
terrifying time to be a grappler. Bob, did you watch the documentary today, the WWE one?
I did, yeah.
What was the Joey Styles? There's a Joey Styles explanation as to why he didn't tell the boys.
Yeah.
Remember this?
So from what Joey Styles said, if you file for bankruptcy, any checks that you write in the previous 90 days can be recouped by collectors. So that's why Paul went to Raw, but then he waited to file for bankruptcy so the guys would get paid.
Yeah, this was the Joey Styles canon. I don't know if Paulie put any thought into that, or to be honest, I think he may have just wanted to go do Raw, but I don't know. It's a dramatic moment in the documentary. I just couldn't remember the details. So, because again, the way the documentary frames Paul is he's a carny but he means well. I think Paul Heyman would be an incredible biopic if you gave it to someone a genuinely skillful director could make a much more sort of broad and detailed portrait of him. I feel
Paul Giamatti as Paul Heyman.
Of course, goes without saying. That's an Oscar winner, bro. I mean, you can take it. You go in so many directions with that. I don't even know what you'd cover.
That's the story in Barbed Wire City, though. I jest about Heyman wanting to protect the boys there at the end, but when things were getting really bad, they would talk about the boys would grab their checks, all pile in a van, and drive to the closest liquor store and cash them before the funds dried up.
Yeah,
it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows.
It was not, and again, we have to be real. I mean, the stuff with Candido and Sonny was like that. You know, that wasn't like, oh, what a crazy guy. You know, like that was just straight up mean. A lot of skeletons in that closet for sure. Like, yeah, crazy to think about. When would you say? I'm more than happy to dwell on this because we're doing a Paul Heyman show. Like, I think it's only right we do. When do you think he becomes like what the diehard fan, the hardcore fan was in the 90s? When do you think he becomes like a sort of character to them as he's a genius? Like, when does that become canon among hardcore fans, do you guys think? Because I know I'm talking out to say he may have said some things to Dave Meltzer throughout the years. They may have spoke a time or 12, right? I mean, maybe once a week, maybe. When do you think he becomes like that guy to wrestling? Because, oh, he's a genius. When do you think that happens?
He should have sold cars, man. You imagine how rich Paul Heyman would be if he sold cars. Like,
yeah.
But a thing like Mike Johnson and a lot of those like original run fans, like he would go out and like talk to and like build build them up and saying like, I'm so glad he did it at One Night Stand when Mike Johnson and fucking Faith No More guy and Vladimir are all there in the front row. He like calls them out and thanks them and shit.
They had a yearly show called CyberSlam.
Yeah.
In ECW that basically said, come all you internet marks and come, and I will basically, I'm being kind of facetious here, but like, that was, am I wrong on that, Alex? I mean, that's basically what that was, right? Like,
yeah. And was it like CyberSlam 97? Whichever one, Sabu wrestled Too Cold Scorpio in that incredible match the two 96. Of them had. 96. Hollywood dignitary John Bolo Keating was at that show. Mm-hmm. I remember one time driving, making a town with him and like him telling me that. I'm like, really? Tell me everything. But yeah, it's Heyman did like he pounded the pavement, man. He went to you to like make you believe. And like all the wrestlers talk, and let's be honest here, it's pro wrestling, not a Mensa convention. A lot of these guys can be swindled pretty easily, and I think that's what he kind of like excelled at. But I need to give him credit because in 1995, television access is a little bit different. There's this weird thing called the internet coming along. I used to be a bit more bitter and cynical towards him than I am now of like, it would have been easy. And I could see wrestlers getting motivated at the idea of we're going to create this movement that is going to rival these other two companies. Because now, like, it was in this very weird time frame of like, now we know what's like possible and what's not, and what is like big and what's not. And then like all fucking bets were off, man. And he had a crew of like good wrestlers. When you compare him to like Hulk Hogan and shit, yeah, Perry Saturn looked small, but he had like capable talent that he was able to, talk into what he wanted them to do. But anyway, to your point, his narrative at this point would be he had all the good ideas for WCW when he was there, and then he did ECW, and ECW was a promotion that made people believe Tommy Dreamer was the greatest babyface in the world. So I think that alone, given a few years removed from that, people are like, oh yeah, that guy knew what the fuck he was doing.
Yeah, it's, we always joke about it because it's like an insane thing. The Tommy Dreamer like anecdote of his like WrestleMania 17 plan is obviously like fucking insane, and it's like, it's a bit. It also does kind of capture the complications of being friends and working with Paul Heyman, though, right? Like, Dreamer's like this old man. Dreamer's like booking the show at the end there, Like, he's not like someone who's on the outs with. It says a lot. The one that I always point to is Taz, Taz is not a guy who was like, I mean, he was a Paul Lee creation, but Taz was also a talented guy and would go on to have a very successful career. And look, I'm not saying he's, I don't know anything about Taz. I don't think he likes me very much, but not for nothing. He doesn't seem like a dumb guy, especially, relative to professional wrestling. And there's that clip I always point at, Rise and Fall of ECW, where he talks about he called Paul Lee on the way to the Garden so he could give him his blessing. He needed Paul Lee to give him his blessing in order to go and work for the WWF at Madison Square Garden. And he's like, once he gave him his blessing, he felt guilty and began to consider going back to ECW, like, for that moment. And it's just,
for all the,
he meant a lot to all those guys. Crazy.
for all the bullshit that I'm talking and just like, general opinions on him as a man, I know exactly what we're talking. I've watched that clip before, and I feel like Brad Pitt and Moneyball. I'm just like, God damn, how can you not be romantic about pro wrestling? You know what I mean? Like, it's the only one that like I've never gotten that from is RVD, where he's just like, yeah, I was owed too much money at the end. He just doesn't give a fuck. But even like Sabu and Shane Douglas, like those guys, we've learned over the years that a guy running a wrestling company in a lot of ways has to be somewhat of a father figure to these guys. They have to like view him in that way, not, to varying degrees, but they need to view him as like kind of like this guy who'll put your arm around you and say everything's going to be okay. And Heyman was that for those guys who all had varying sizes of chips on their shoulder. And to this day, like Shane Douglas, Sabu, just like I said, no telling how much money they're owed.
Yeah.
They'll still talk about him endearingly.
Well, yeah. Riley asked what is very quick. I'd say if you were looking for something, I think Dark Side of the Ring about Tammy and Chris covered it like pretty good, right?
Yeah.
It was the thing that, and again, Cornette is obviously terribly flawed in a range of ways, but it was the thing that kind of changed, I think, Cornette's view of Paul Lee, right? In the sense of like, oh, he's full of shit, to actually fuck him. And, the thing that made TV was when Sonny was going through all the she was going through the time he put on TV. Yeah.
Segments on TNN. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was tasteless, but the money part of it is obviously like destructive.
I never knew about that interview either. Like that was when I watched that, because I watched a lot of the TNN stuff, but I never went back and did a deep dive through it. And
it's part of I mean, it is what it is. I don't think you can ignore that stuff, right? I mean, it's like, it worked out. Everyone had a great time. It's like, no, not necessarily. Like, nonetheless, we should note when we talk about the jump to WWF and him and the ECW cap, he was on WWF TV in '97, right? As with the ECW invasion, and he gets some serious TV time there for that couple of weeks. He gets to promote his pay-per-view. He gets to reference Jerry Lawler being a pedophile on Monday Night Raw, which is an insane moment that is like, so I think is almost understated how fucking crazy it is that happens on a 1997 episode, or any episode of Raw for that matter.
WWF was so that in the build to WrestleMania,
yes,
they did the ECW episode because they were just so desperate. What I always remember from that is the BWO's their entrance, and Vince is like, "Well, who's this?" And Heyman says, "Big Stevie Cool, a member of the BWO, the Blue World Order," and Vince goes, "Which has nothing to do with the New World Order clothing line."
And Lawler is like, they're a cheap ripoff, they're a parody. And Paulie goes, what are they parodying, Jerry? Tell them what they're parodying. And Jerry goes dead silent. It's an amazing, I mean, it's the best thing about that episode is him and Jerry yelling at each other.
And I promise we'll move on, Joe, but you did mention his name, so I want to circle back to it.
Please do.
Taz, there was really, I couldn't think of like a fitting Taz match here. He does get choked out by Heyman does by Taz at some point in his run, but Taz has to be Heyman's crowning achievement as a booker. I think I jest with my love with Shane Douglas and Rob Van Dam, obviously, but as time has proven, Rob Van Dam would have been just fine wherever he was. Taz was Heyman, having his finger on the pulse of what was hot, with the the advent of the Ultimate Fighting Championship and having this idea of a character who was a shoot fighter. He brought in famous/infamously Paul Varlins, who competed in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, who lost to Taz in a build shoot fight. And Sabu is obviously up there too, but like I don't feel out of line in saying that Taz was like Heyman's crowning achievement with the ECW run.
Here's the only thing I would say, and you're way more well versed in ECW than but the Sandman got a Legends contract this year. And like, we've loved Tahak, who seems to be like, he seems in great form now too, which pops me. Like, good for him. Him having action figures in 2024 feels like Paulie's greatest triumph. I'm afraid, Alex. I don't know.
Taz's heel turn at November to November 1995 is one of the great heel turns in the history of wrestling. because like he turns heel and he gets on the mic and he goes, "Fuck you, you piece of shit!" to like people in the crowd and like cussing guys out in the front row, and it's like fucking awesome.
The only reason, with Love to Hack, he he was Todd Gordon's boy, and he was basically he was grandfathered in, and but Taz, you remember he was the Tasmaniac. He had the long hair and the face paint and shit, and then they like reinvented him, and it's but that's a very good point, because like you said, Taz was a talented cat, and I love me some Sandman, but I think the four of us could, if we were drunk enough, could pull off the shit that guy did.
I think you also previously stumbled into one of the answers, which is Dreamer. Like, Dreamer can still walk out with the fucking ECW shot and get nostalgia pop, dude.
Yeah, that's no joke. Those guys thought like he was their fucking Ricky Steamboat, that company, which is just insane when you think about it, man. And also Paul Heyman's crowning achievement. I'm sorry, I missed it. It was the Full Blood Italians, because the Full Blood Italians with Little Guido, Tommy Rich, and Tracy Smothers being billed from Nashville, Italy, is one of the great comedy acts.
The show at the arena where the weekend Frank Sinatra dies and they beat the shit out of Blue Meanie and bloody him up, and Tommy Rich goes, "This is for all blue eyes."
Incredible.
Yeah, to the point, for those listening that don't really have too much history of ECW, Heyman did have an ability to either underutilized or guys who had floundered or just not found their Al Snow still has a career in pro wrestling because Paul Heyman helped him like find something new to do. So
he's the one to blame.
Yeah, there you go. Get him.
So 2001, a wild year in wrestling, as mentioned. The second and third promotions in the States are gone, but the Alliance is here for the ill-fated and infamous Invasion angle. Paul Lee is the mouthpiece on commentary for this said alliance, and this creates a dynamic where him and Jim Ross just even more so than usual antagonize one another. And this is the blow-off. Winner takes all. The main event, Survivor Series 2001, November 18th, 2001 to be exact.
I can't control you. Yeah, it was very sad.
I forgot Puddle of
It's
Mud.
gone, right?
Yeah.
We have Team Alliance, which is, of course, naturally, Booker T, Kurt Angle, Rob Van Dam, Shane McMahon, Steve Austin taking on the all-star WWF team of The Big Show, Chris Jericho, Kane, The Rock, and The Undertaker. This is a famous match. Before we get to it, we should note that Paul Lee, in the lead-up to this, cuts one of his most famous promos, right, Bobby? I see you nodding from it. The shoot promo on Vince, where he calls Taz fat, right, Bob?
Yeah, it's on the SmackDown before this, and that's when Taz chokes him out at the end and set the stage for this.
So I did a tweet last night about this. Now, I like this match, to be clear. I think this match is very good. I, however, am of the belief. Yes, Alex.
Before you get there, I would just like to put on the record, the Invasion 10-man is better than this, but Heyman wasn't on commentary for that, and we wanted to get Heyman commentary. So
why was he not on commentary?
Because he was managing at ringside. Him, Shane, and Stephanie were at ringside. Yeah. So if you are listening to this, you never watched the Invasion angle, the 10-man from Invasion is a superior match to this, but this has way more star power, and Paul Heyman's on the call.
And it captures Paulie as a commentator, which is, it's a short run in the WWF, but a great run. And him and Jim are, I think, one of the all-time great teams. Mm-hmm. And I think they're the best two workers in this match. And I don't even I like the match. I think the match is very good. I think it has issues, but I think it's generally very good. But Jim Ross and Paul Heyman are unbelievable on this call. You couldn't quote every great line. Just incredible chemistry that they actually, to me, capture the gravity and the supposed winner takes all stakes better than the boys did. Especially the first half of this match is mostly just the guys kind of just working their way through it, and Paulie and Jim are the ones that are this is everything.
My favorite interaction is because Heyman's just being a complete fucking annoying piece of shit the entire time, and he keeps taking digs at Oklahoma, and they're 32 minutes into the match, and Jared goes, "That's one too many digs, Oklahoma. That's just one too many digs. That's one too many." Too many times.
There's a part where Heyman's why don't you just accept that the WWF guys can't work together? And Jim Ross goes, well, why don't you kiss my ass?
Yeah. And there's one where when Jim's you're a badass when he says that to Paulie, because Paulie's talking about being a tough guy. Oh, that's great. They're the best thing about the match, and I like the match, but it's
Shame
a
it, man.
longer match. It has a couple of lulls, but generally this is very good, and you get the Rock and Austin shootout to close, which I think is very, very strong. Bobby, I'm assuming you've seen this many times. What did you make of it?
I am. I like it. It is too long, but like just the star power alone, and like you said, the gravity of the situation, especially if you watch the entire show, from the start, because they do kind of call back to that all night. It's kind of the big thing tying everything together. Definitely agree on Heyman and JR. But yeah, I mean, maybe they felt it had to be this long because of the situation, but like I don't know, you probably could have cut like 10 minutes off, and like I think the beginning, the first 10 or 12 minutes, mostly just Shane getting in there and breaking up every pin and being a little workhorse, and then you get like 6 eliminations in the next 8 minutes, and it's just like I don't know, like maybe you could have cut a little bit of that first part, and I have no problem with the Rock and Austin stuff at the end, but like I don't know, it's a little too long, but it's not bad. I do like the Invasion one better though.
Well, I think the actual lull personally is when they like reset for the 2-on-2 tag and get heat on Jericho.
Yeah,
I just think it's like to me it's just excess at that point. And also Jericho has like a weird night here where he like there's a bunch of miscues involving Jericho. You guys notice that where he like shoots guys off and they get their wires crossed? It happens a bunch in this match. It's weird because like we give Jericho shit now, but that wasn't something that we'd like see in a match of this caliber a lot with him then. He has an interesting performance. Obviously, there's a bunch of turns. There's 2 swerves at the end. And
Jesus.
all sorts of shit going on. Which, by the way, quickly, what was the like? Was the kayfabe reasoning that like they bought Kurt after he got eliminated? Like, why did he?
Basically, the thing is Vince in the lead up to it says we have a mole, and Kurt was the mole.
Oh yeah.
In the alliance, and everyone was paranoid about who's the mole, and Kurt was.
Right.
And then the next night on Raw, they just decided, Austin's babyface again, because they're going to cheer him anyways.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was Austin was mad at Kurt for costing the alliance, the match, but Austin was the babyface and Kurt was the heel, and
if Kurt was the mole, why did he like?
Because that was a plot by Vince McMahon. Yes.
Doesn't he eliminate the Big Show?
Kurt turning was a plot orchestrated by Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
What the fuck?
Angle
Are we talking about how much sense the match makes?
To infiltrate the alliance and turn on Steve Austin.
But like, shouldn't he have just like immediately kicked the shit out of his team members rather than pinning the Big Show?
That's the Big Show.
Speaking of such, the Big Show, is he brought back for this spot? Because this is when he's like told to lose weight, isn't it?
So he was kind of. So he comes back at the One Rumble, right? And he's in the hardcore division. And then he and Billy Gunn form a tag team in the summer called Shoguns.
The Shoguns, yes.
The Shoguns. And then Big Show's basically just like the big babyface brother for whoever needs a tag partner in the alliance. Like,
he has
Fury.
Dude, do you remember Oracle? Big Show. It's like a 6-man at Invasion. It's Big Show, Albert, and Billy Gunn against.
Oh yeah, it's a total shootout. It's awesome. Yeah,
it's fucking Hugh Morris and Sean Stasiak, maybe.
Yeah, and Chuck Palumbo, I think.
It's the card we all fantasy booked when we thought of WWF versus WCW.
Yeah. Right.
Sounds like it.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of the Big Show, he has like his involvement in this. He just kicks ass like 90 seconds and gets eliminated. Pop me huge. Yeah. Which then leads to the death of Shane McMahon, which we'll get to. Oracle, what do you make of this match? I know it's a broad question because it's like 50 minutes long. What do you make of it?
This match is, as someone who watched the whole alliance thing, from beginning to end as it aired. I was a little kid, whereas Alex was a little bit older than me, so I it'd be interesting to hear his perspective. But this match was like a match that felt huge for me at the time as a kid. Like, and I was aware enough that it was kind of like, even as a 9-year-old, like I knew that the storyline was like obviously the WWF was going to win, and like I found it more entertaining, but I wasn't like. But because of the poor booking of it, I never really like hated the alliance. Like I thought Alliance Stone Cold Steve Austin was funny. Like we used to, like, you know what I mean? So it was like, but I do remember being upset because we couldn't get the pay-per-view. And And then one of my childhood friends had gotten it, I think on DVD, or maybe because like sometimes he would get pay-per-views, but we couldn't go over that night, and he would tape him a VHS, and we'd borrow it from him, so on and so forth. But I remember watching the match and loving it at the time. It's still a really good match. I prefer the first half of the match to the second half.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I really like the dynamic of Shane keeping breaking up
Same.
the
Yeah.
They use him very well because he's not out wrestling Kurt Angle or something. He's
Yeah.
All right,
Imagine
hold-
that.
hold
that'd be
on.
stupid.
Hold on.
Yeah.
That's coming next month. All right.
Yeah.
he's coming. He's coming into the ring and just breaking up pin attempts, and JR keeps getting more mad and mad. Oh
Yeah.
damn, Shane again.
It's good.
He's
Yeah,
like,
it's good.
but like, then they do the whole deal where they just like all like hit Big Show with a bunch of big moves or whatever. And Shane gets his ass kicked, gets eliminated. After Shane gets eliminated, Shane's an awesome worker. The match honestly goes downhill for me. Not like bad. It just gets kind of stagnant. And then picks back up after a couple of eliminations. And then with the final shootout with Austin and Rock is great. And of course, Kurt Angle has the belt shot in the rock bottom. And the way that like the pinfall gets a big pop and JR like loses his mind. And I always love the backstage shot of like Stephanie doing the whole, of course, the completely ridiculous ending to the show with Vince on the ramp was
Oh.
unbelievably absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I mean, was that supposed to be funny? Like, what? I mean, like, I don't understand what occurred, but it was.
Triumphant, I think. I think we're supposed to be
There-
happy.
there's a snenario.
comical.
There's a
Yeah.
scenario where the final pay-per-view of that angle ends like that, and it's remembered much better. Like they had
Right.
just like semi-competently pulled off the invasion angle, and Vince gets to celebrate at the end, which is going to happen when Bob's boy pardons him here in about 2 months. But
Yeah.
Great is on the finish when Jim yells, "You're out of work."
he
You're
says
out of work.
you're out of job again.
Is it?
He adds
Again,
that.
the alliance dies is one of his lines. He's spectacular. Jim actually rises to the occasion and outdoes Paul Lee on this one. I think
Uh-huh.
we do this a lot. I think it's important to keep doing it while he's still around. Like, dude, Jim Ross he's the greatest ever at this. Like, there was a guy once on Twitter called Robert O'Neill who pretended he wasn't once, and it was real shameful. But when you really study the tape, there's no one close to JR. I'm sorry.
Just in the 2 matches with him tonight, I mean, like, he was over there screaming in the WarGames match about,
Yeah.
"Oh, God, Jess, it looks like a car wreck on I-95."
Yeah.
This era, though, in particular, of 2000 to 2002, 03, however long they kept him around in WWF,
awesome.
his ability to make the most menial shit seem like massive is like incredible.
Unbelievable.
He is great. I think he's awesome through 05, through 2005, and then when he leaves, he is great mostly from 06 to 08. But it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's shaky, but it's like he's consistent, but like he might have dipped a little bit, but he still has amazing calls, like Umaga or whatever,
dude.
But then he totally gives up when he gets drafted to SmackDown as a shoot. He's like, he's done.
Yeah.
You just think like Backlash 2000 and like some of the calls from this era that were incredible. Yeah.
Tremendous stuff. He is the star of the show in my book, but I really like this. His reaction to Nick Patrick, by the way, incredible.
I'm actually not opposed to that, Riley. Speaking to
Jim Ross, Grin Grappler. Yeah, dude. So this one's like,
he's like awesome on commentary.
Yeah, you'd have to I'd have to really sit down and think about like what are the great, you know what I'm saying? Because there's a difference between the great Jim Ross calls and the great matches necessarily.
Taz and Jerry Lawler from SummerSlam 2000, one of JR's friends. Yeah.
And I mean, everyone dissects and questions Austin Turner and Hill, but my God, Jim's call of that is something else, isn't it?
No.
Like Satan himself and all that stuff.
And our boy Heyman, it adds to that because I always remember the finish of that match is JR goes, "What the hell is this?" And Heyman goes, "It's a new champion." When the 3 count happens,
What a great time! I'm glad we did just talk about this team. And it's also a match we're never going to cover otherwise. So, Alex, I'm going to throw it to you now, and I'm going to say it. Yes, I agree with Oracle. Shane McMahon is good in this match. If it happened 15 years later, he'd have been the sole survivor.
Yeah.
But it used to be better in many ways. Shane McMahon's usage being one of them. He's very fun in this match. The match is very good. The way I describe it is very good, almost in spite of itself at times, I think. But nonetheless, what did you make of this, Alex?
It is good. If we're talking about the era, it exists within the same 2-year time span as the greatest Survivor Series match of all time, being Team Austin versus Team Bischoff. So, it's easy to kind of let it get swallowed in that time frame. Like I said, even the inaugural Brawl and Invasion is a better multi-man tag match than this, but it is very good. I'm going to try to get through my notes as quickly as possible. It is in Greensboro. Is this at the Coliseum?
It might be at the Coliseum.
Kind of looked like it because it went up pretty far.
It was.
Fascinating place for the blow off to the invasion angle.
No fucking shit, because my first note is Sting's
Yes.
Greensboro? Yeah.
Coliseum.
When RVD hits the ring, Paul Heyman goes, "Let me tell you a story. Back in 1996," and Jim Ross cuts him off and goes, "Let me guess, it's an ECW story?" And I talked earlier about how I'm a bigger ECW fan than some of my brothers here on the panel. I also think that I'm a bigger Rob Van Dam fan than probably Joe, at least. But Rob Van Dam is a heel. Like, people don't understand. Like, there's just like little subtleties between what he did. But like when he gets to the ring here and he's just telling Howard Finkel how great he is, I'm like, God, he was so fucking awesome. There's a he's the one guy from the Invasion team that gets like a tag and the place goes fucking nuts. They're like, oh shit, Rob Van Dam's here. Possibly the hottest take on this entire episode, the GOAT Steve Austin theme, the Invasion one. Jigga 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 jigga. Yeah, that's
aggressive, dude. That's very aggressive.
But he's got like the fucking Satan goatee going on, and he comes out like laughing. One day we will have a Steve Austin Grin Grappler, but in one act we'll need to just be 2 Invasion era matches, because this run of him, yes, it's the angle that killed the business for 20 years, but he did some fantastic work in this time period.
He gets better. He does some like stunning Steve routines all over again. It's crazy. I mean, he's in agony doing it, but he does it. He has some great matches.
He like misses getting into the ring and then laughs at himself and starts like yelling. It's so good. I didn't realize what was already a thing at this point, though. That was pretty terrifying. I'm almost positive this is the one and only time we got the inverse tank top Kane gear. That was the black on red instead of the red on black. Which, of course, in this perverted age of wrestling figures, there's been, I think, 2 that that capture this outfit. From a Grin Grappler perspective, I thought this was kind of a fun thing, because in our Bam Bam Bigelow episode, we covered obviously the first Survivor Series, and why that happened was the just supernova that was Hogan and Andre. And that match starts with the whole idea of Hogan and Andre facing off. And here we get, not from a height perspective, but similar from a drawing perspective, The Rock and Austin face off here. It's kind of like a full circle thing in a way. The Rock does the Thez press, which I popped for. RVD gets a good pop. Booker T, this is still at the point where he was basically just made to look like a fool in all his WWF stuff. Like, he gets a few moments of offense in this, but it's a lot of him just running into the Undertaker. And, Booker T is revered for being him and DDP being the 2 guys that came over at this time and took pennies on the dollar for the buyout of their contracts and whatnot. And obviously it worked out for him, but I think him and DDP, both, people kind of forget that they were just kind of there to be punching bags for a little while, and it seemed like that was kind of the case in this match. Shane McMahon is very intelligent in this match. He has a beautiful elbow drop. And Bob, you might be able to help me out with this. The tombstone the Undertaker gives Shane McMahon upon elimination, was that the shut your mouth or here comes the pain? I know they added that into one of the games.
I think that was the shut your mouth one.
Yeah, because it went SmackDown 2, know your role, and then shut your mouth, right? Was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just bring it and then shut your mouth, and then here comes the pain.
Just bring it. Yes. There you go.
Bring it with The Rock doing this, and then shut your mouth one with Triple H going, right?
Yep.
Just Bring It is the first one on PlayStation 2, because I remember that was like the graphic.
I had all 3. I had that one. Then I had Here Comes the Pain. I also had SmackDown 2 as well.
Yeah, that's God, what a time to be alive.
So
But yeah,
what was the tombstone? I'm confused. What?
okay, so he picks Shane up, and Shane basically grapevines his legs around Taker's head. So
yeah.
Taker just puts his arms to the side and then does the double thumbs down.
Yeah.
So like that, and then the Steve Austin stunner on Scott Hall, where he stuns him and then he stands back up into another stunner. That was also in, I think, Shut Your Mouth or Here Comes the Pain. But blessed time for wrestling video games. There is an old school feel to this. Rob Van Dam almost breaks his leg at one point. It's a very weird circumstance of situation where like he does that single leg drop kick off the top rope, and Kane falls and hits the mat, and RVD lands on one leg as the ring is recoiling, and it like jams it back into him.
Oof.
Like it, I had to rewind it because it looks so fucking terrifying. And RVD is one of those guys we've talked about before. He had the one ankle injury that was like a freak accident, and for a guy like AJ Styles is a great example we've talked about. For a guy who did so much insane shit his entire career, his one big injury was just like a fucking fluke. Chris Jericho comes in the ring and tries to do a bunch of Jerry Lynn shit with Rob Van Dam. We get a cut to the back in which I popped that Harvey Whippleman's just chilling with the WWF guys for some reason.
Yes.
Let's go, boys. Jericho was still using that god-awful version of the stroke that he called the breakdown. Awful.
If you ever want to appreciate like the way Jeff Jarrett did that move, watch how Jericho does it. What was he cooking with that? Then he was like falling down. It was bizarre.
My big takeaway from this, aside from the Heyman stuff we've talked about, is that they knew what they had with Rob Van Dam, because he is the last to get eliminated before it comes down to the final four, which, you know, spoiler alert, the next month they did a tournament for the title, and it was the final four of this match. Rob Van Dam the month before this was in the ring with Steve Austin for the world title, and they knew how hot he was, and it was undeniable. And then I don't know if any of y'all can help me out with this. Did something happen the next month? Did like someone come back that may have like, you know, affected the way Rob Van Dam's push went from this point?
No, I'm that's a thing. Oh no, he's like a big star. You mean?
It's
no.
Things happened so much quicker that it's just kind of funny to watch. This was like, oh no, they still thought he was
Are you implying that there were politics in a pro wrestling main event scene? Is that what you're saying right now, Alex?
There may have been.
Chief Content Officer Paul Levesque recently told us that is not a thing. I would have you know. So,
and upon said comeback, I think he was approximately like, we're talking like legitimately 4 times the size of what he is right now.
Yeah,
you know?
He looked crazy when he came back,
dude. When Kurt Angle gets locked in the sharpshooter and immediately taps out, Paul Heyman goes, "What the hell is this? Doesn't he know my job's on the line?" And then when we get down here, and before that, excuse me, Angle, him and The Rock, when they would get fucking humming, man, The Rock throws him and Angle almost flies out of the ring, dude. Like,
it's such good chemistry, didn't they? Yeah. Great stuff.
And it comes down to the final 2 here, and The Rock and Steve Austin sold for each other differently than they sold for anybody else. Like, they, you know, talk about flying. The Rock, when he takes that slingshot into the ring post, just like flies face first into it. And, you know, now if he did that, there'd be 3 agents in between it. But it's not great. You know, warts and all, it's a good time. Jericho, I kind of like the idea of Jericho gets eliminated and he can't accept the fact that because he keeps saying I'm the hero, so he lays The Rock out, and you get Jim Ross, son of a bitch, you know, that type of shit. And he says, "Is he a fool? He's going to be out of a job."
Yeah, I love what he said. Is he a fool?
And the ending of the way WCW versus WWF ends is that Kurt Angle turns on Steve Austin, hits him in the head with the belt. Steve Austin gets pinned, and Paul Heyman and Jim Ross are the only people that make this moment seem like important, because, you know, Heyman just like, what the hell? And when the 3 count happens, it cuts to him like incredulous. He just rips his headset off and throws it at the table, and that's when JR hits him with, "You're out of a job again." And then they cut to the WWF locker room celebrating, and it appears as though Perry Saturn just woke up, like he's behind everybody. And he has that look on his face where he's not looking at anyone or the camera, but as someone who fell asleep, and then a very loud noise startled him awake. He's just kind of looking around, like not sure what to do.
I just wanted to point out, Alex, that I also had to explain to Joe that Kurt Angle not only turned on Steve Austin to end this huge program, but he was a mole told by Vincent Kennedy McMahon to infiltrate the alliance. If you recall, it was a plot from Vince and Kurt Angle.
And then it's worth calling out, because we talk about things that go viral every once in a while. The Go Home SmackDown for this, without fail, every 3 months, someone will post a clip of like the 10 wrestlers hitting their back-to-back finishes on one another and be like, "Oh, WWF used to cook," that type of shit.
We should talk about our hero, The Undertaker, too, who gets his own moment of, just that big. He gets eliminated, kind of just gets dispatched, right? You're like, oh, is that all Taker's doing? And then he gets the big moment where he stops Jericho from going back to the ring. He's the
conscience.
leader.
He's the conscience of the WWF. Yeah, this was when he was doing that shit where he would do the arm wringer and now we go old school. He would just yell that shit to the crowd.
He does it twice in this match, dude. Twice.
Like most things involving the Undertaker, it's a bit aggressive. I say that, but he was about to embark on the greatest run of his career when he cut his hair and became the hardcore champion and was wrestling people like Mike Dudley.
Oh, Booger Red. Big Evil. Paul, what is the line Jim has where he's like, the alliance is out of business, Paul Heyman is out of business, or something like that?
Okay, and like, before we move on, it can't be understated how incredible the night after is, where Vince comes out to start Raw and does his shit, and Heyman like tries to suck up to him and says, I didn't mean all that stuff I said. I haven't watched this in years, but I think this is how it goes. And then he's just like, "Fuck you, you're fired. Get out of here." And Heyman like shakes his head, and then he goes out and he lunges across the table at Jim Ross to try to attack JR. And then JR just starts fucking hammer fisting him. and he's got his headset on still, so you just keep hearing, "Come on, you son of a bitch."
Have you ever seen that?
I've seen the segment, but I don't remember it like vividly. I need to rewatch it.
And
this is the show where Flair shows up, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So the opening segment is Mick Foley on an airplane with like Vince, and Vince is like,
he quits
Foley from his commissionership, and then they pan to JR and Heyman, and then they have that, and then Jerry Lawler comes back.
Yes,
because they have security, like they carry Heyman out low key style, just like kicking and screaming, and then the King's music hits, and Jim Ross goes, "There is a God."
And then the show ends with the because it was supposed to wasn't it like a Vince Austin Kiss My Ass segment or something they're supposed to do? And then I think Flair interrupts that, and then there was a consortium,
Yeah.
The consortium is me. Yeah.
And then Vince does his famous,
That was that Flair promo. "I was watching the Survivor Series in a big house on the big side of town on the biggest TV." And that's all they do to turn Austin babyface again, is he just comes out and starts beating up Kurt Angle. It's awesome because his music hits and Kurt Angle immediately grabs the mic. He's like, "All right, hold on. I know this seems bad, but I can explain." And then Austin just gets in the ring and starts beating the shit out of him. Yeah.
Is this the like? What
the
has
Raw
he
is
commentated?
Totally, I remember watching that Raw from like the beginning to end as a kid, and that show is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Has Paulie commentated a match? Like, has he done commentary again after this match we just covered? Has he sat in to represent one of his guys? Like, yeah.
I feel like he would have had to, but yeah.
Same, but I can't think of it. The chat may not.
When they first started WWE ECW, he might have done it for like a big show match or something.
Yeah, this could be like.
That sounds right.
Yeah,
this is an interesting chat. Have you have any like exact example? Because this was one of the last matches he did commentary on.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
Yeah, because I can't think of anything from SmackDown.
Nor can I.
I don't know. Never did anything during the Roman run. I know that.
No,
Unless the only way he did something in the Roman run is if it was at like the PC. You know, when they were just desperate to do anything to make the show watchable with the fucking screens surrounding them.
Yeah, but that
or the
doesn't count.
Thunderdome. Yeah, true, it doesn't count. Maybe during 2002 Raw. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's
I
an
don't
interesting
think
question.
so,
I don't
though.
think so either. Could be an interesting thing to look into, but nonetheless, of course, that is his last night SmackDown in 2022. Yeah, I think there may be something. As an actual color commentator, this is it, right? This is the end of that run. He reemerges with Brock Lesnar, of course, and they have a wild run where Brock becomes kind of the fastest ascending wrestler ever, right?
Yep.
He's the world beats The Rock at SummerSlam mere months after debuting. He then gets the pencil over on SmackDown and adds to that kind of legacy as a booker and gets more favor with the hardcore fan with the SmackDown 6, and he gets to be the cool opposition to Triple H's Monday Night Raw. Then he irritates everyone involved, and at one point hacked into a conference call. Did he not?
Yep.
What was that story, Bob? He
Yeah, he was suspended for doing whatever, and yeah, he just went in the conference call anyway, and I guess the number of people they expected didn't match the number of people there, so they figured out it was him quite easily. But yeah. Or either that, or he stayed on the Raw one instead of the SmackDown one.
Yeah, he had I think he may have had a shoot mole. I think.
Yeah.
And he started doing that thing that he brought back in 2019 where he would whisper to the boys, stick with me, kid. This SmackDown thing's taken off. So, yeah. So he did that. Go for it, Alex.
Bit of a crossover for myself and Joe's future project. In 2005, there was a thing of he warned Vince about the impending power of the Ultimate Fighting Championship and MMA and could take over. And there's varying degrees of reports of him trying to get involved in the mixed martial arts realm.
Strikeforce was a thing.
Yeah,
at one point.
Strikeforce. That was around the same time as the TNA shit was going on and whatnot. And there was even whispers of him trying to put together a panel to buy Pride when it was up for grabs, which LOL, Shane McMahon also tried to get his dad to buy that. So imagine the world we could be living in right now.
I think Paul got very good at keeping his name in the news, I
would agree with that because it's become very clear since he left in 2006 and then eventually came back in the early 2010s that there's a difference between his name being in the headlines and then him actually executing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He's smart enough and cunning enough to accomplish what he wants. But to your point, there's never in his mind, and correctly, never a little danger in keeping your name out there and all the headlines and whatnot.
Very much so. He irritated the WWE office so much that he was sent to OVW, where he replaced Jim Cornette.
Yep.
And Jim Cornette has all these horror stories about how he killed Louisville and he did all these horrible things to the sacred OVW television product.
He killed Mike Mondo.
Yeah, which he had plants. There's all these stories. He has plants in the crowd, and obviously he pushed a whole new crop of guys. That's where the Punk Alliance is formed.
Yep.
And then he is pulled back up to the big show for, of course, One Night Stand after the success of Rise and Fall. And then the ill-fated ECW relaunch. Now, that's a 6-month spell there where he's kind of booking ECW again, and it ends with December to Dismember where he has that big flame out.
Yeah.
How much, if any, of the blame for the ECW relaunch's initial failure? Because eventually ECW becomes just a nice little C show for guys to find their way.
Yeah.
Initially, it's trying to be ECW. How much of the failure of that sits, kind of hangs over Paulie's head, do you think, Bob, in a fair world? Because if we're being honest, he gets absolutely none of the blame for that at all.
Yeah, I guess it was always going to be tough with Vince and the stuff that Sci-Fi was making him do.
Yeah.
And, running Big Show and Batista and your first Big Show at Hammerstein. I don't know whose call that was. I would be surprised if it was Paul. But, obviously, I don't think his heart was in it. I think it's been done to death, but it was a mistake after the first One Night Stand to even do another one. Just leave well enough alone, and because that show is universally loved, even
That's brilliant.
to today. And yeah, it was never going to work. Like, yeah, I'm sure he's part of it. He's probably burnt out by then too. He'd been reassigned so many times, and he went to OVW for a little bit, and then came back from that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, probably some, not the bulk of it, obviously, but I'm sure he's responsible.
Because I guess his involvement is literally just like they shopped it to TV networks. TV networks bit it. They got the TV deal. Like, it's either he's going to do it or they're just going to do it without him, right? So I guess it's like...
Yeah, and then, I mean, he was trying to do it, obviously, because a lot of the December Dismember stuff was like, I'm going to go with Punk. I'm going to make Punk the guy, and they just wouldn't go for it. And so it's like they wouldn't even let him do it his way by that point.
Yeah.
So...
Alex, you've often talked about the ECW house show at the ECW arena with Big Show on top. And there was a recent thing about, like, the crowd apparently turned on Paul when he was doing his usual, this is EC fucking W. They were like, actually, this fucking sucks, Paul. And they turned on him. Do you remember, like, was there a shift in the online discussion about Paul Lee around that time? Or was it very much Vince is fucking with this?
Yeah, I remember that show in particular being really excited to read the live reports and shit, because that's still when like CZW was running there and shit. Like it was and for those who don't know, like it was before the renovations, before Ring of Honor like started running their full time. Like if you watch Final Battle, what is that, 2015 with Jay Lethal and AJ Styles, the arena you see there is not what that thing was in 2006. Like I remember reading that and being like, oh no, this is not good. And yeah, there were people that were blaming Heyman, and in classic Heyman fashion, he did save a lot of face when he walked out after December to Dismember. And, we love our boy Lashley on here. We've done a full fucking episode for him. He got a lot of that heat transferred to him from the online fan of like, oh, this guy fucking sucks. He's the chosen one of the new regime. The whole thing is weird because it's like the whole concept had no place to go after they started it with Rob Van Dam versus John Cena. And they had that match the way it was in front of the crowd it was, and Rob Van Dam won. And I can't tell you what I expected. I knew it wasn't going to be fucking ECW fuck shit bitch, like, that type of shit. The only thing I really remember coming from it, and I think would be its lasting legacy, is CM Punk. Like CM Punk came in, debuted at Hammerstein, and he eventually won the title.
Specifically, his ties, like that, brought his ties with Heyman more to the fore, right? Because even though they wasn't associated on screen, you think of him as the last ECW guy, the only ECW guy from that era. You know, a bit of Elijah Burke, respectfully to the Pope. Well, hold on.
Sylvester Terkay or
Marcus Corvon.
Dude, that was, I remember that one hurt me when they put fucking Monty Brown on that show. I was like,
imagine what Paul Lee would have done with Monty Brown too, like in a different scenario, My God.
But yeah, it was it was just from the jump, it didn't feel right because and now we know all these things. The sci-fi, the zombie and the monsters ball and all this bullshit that they wanted because they were on the Sci-Fi Network. I mean, if we're gonna thumb through it, where there's some good B-sides, sure. We got that Ric Flair Big Show hardcore match, and we got what we did one of the Grappler, Jack Swagger and Christian was one of the matches that we did.
Actually, it gets quite good once it is not trying to be easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, where it just accepts what it is.
Yeah.
There's a Chavo side to hell match that it's like tremendous, dude. Like, it sounds ridiculous to say this, but they get like 12 minutes on TV and just tear it up, rock the house. It's a great match.
I went to 2 of the house shows they did in 2006 when I was still thinking it was going to be RVD no-showed both of them, so I was like fucking beast. But it's it's like, even in what I can remember in real time was all the online narrative was that it's no matter what Heyman has control of or doesn't, he's going to make CM Punk a star. Because the big thing when he let CM, he fought for CM Punk to keep his name coming in and all that shit. That was, but yeah, when that ECW arena show happened, that was kind of, it wasn't even 6 months. It wasn't enough time for the rose to be off the bloom. It was just people, oh, okay. And that's, that eventually led to shit like Hardcore Homecoming or not hard. What was it? Extreme Reunion was the promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but to put the close on that, it's like I said, Heyman has always had the wherewithal to get out of a situation before it will appear as though he has any of the blame.
Yes. We do have an answer. Thank you to Andrew. So I checked. Paul has done 3 commentary gigs during the Bloodline era. He did a main event show
Hell yeah.
in 2013 and the 05 draw. So there we go, folks. There's the answer. Thank you very much, Andrew. While we're looking at the chat, I'm wondering, there's been a big spike in viewership. I even saw earlier, Patrick the Heel was in here, fellow Shotzi Blackheart stan, Alex. And with this spike in viewership, it feels like a good time to give the people some advice on what they can do if they like this show. Bob, right?
Yeah, so what you can do is you want to smash that like button.
And now this is important, Bob. If they're new, they can just hit it without any concern.
Yeah, if you're new, you can do it. If you've done it the first 2 times, you can do it a 3rd time. If you've only done it 1 other time, don't do it again, because what if we don't remember to say it 1 more time? So again, odd numbers. Brainbuster was on this in the chat earlier. He can remind you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. So he leaves December to Dismember, and he kind of becomes this, like, what if TNA can get Paul Heyman? It becomes like the big, and this goes on for years, and like it even goes on to the point where they've hired Hogan, and Heyman has that big stand. Like, he has 2 big stands with Dixie. One of them is, I want a piece of the company, which is like, well, obviously that's not going to happen. And the other one is, anyone over 40, like other than Kurt Angle, gets released. And like, they've just committed this money to Hulk Hogan, and like, they're obviously not going to do this, but Paul knows that. Paul is very aware,
Forgot to mention that in the dying days of ECW, he tried to get Billy Corgan to buy a part of the company. He convinced Billy Corgan that ECW was worth $10 million.
Yeah.
Or tried to.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Strike Force thing. That was a thing around this time, and like him doing like collaborations with Strike Force guys and Elite XC guys. He supposedly had a hand in like the promotional material of the Brock fights.
You don't say.
Man. Yeah, right. He just kind of floated around, and like he did the Heyman Hustle thing, which seems deeply perverted, but I'll leave that there. And then he returned. And honestly, considering like all we've talked about, a very like cold and just like random return, as Brock came back. Brock cut 1 live promo, didn't like it, and then immediately was like, "Can we bring Paul Heyman back?" And they're like, "Well, I guess for you we can, Brock." And then he just emerged on Raw one day to speak on behalf of Brock Lesnar. And this launched now, as I said earlier, is now a 12-year run, which is absolutely absurd, where he has gone through all these different, chapters. We begin our Act 3. Before we do, I should actually stop. What other matches do you want to call out for Act 2 before we even get there? My bad, fellas. What should we...
He goes through the table in the Brock SummerSlam match. That's always fun.
I put it on the table for this episode, the original Brock Taker Hell in a Cell, because Heyman blades in that match.
Yeah,
and
that match is great too.
It is. Yeah. It's a bit of an ask. We did one of his greatest WWF managerial job matches during that time on our Big Show episode when we did Big Show versus Brock Lesnar for Survivor Series 02. That's a huge match for Heyman where he turns on Brock and
any other stuff?
I would recommend every Heidenreich Taker match. No. But people do forget that obviously understandably so, that when he got, when he came back in 03 as a GM and he had that whole angle, and then he had the thing with the Dudleys and, murdered Paul Bearer and all this other stupid shit.
That was bad, real bad.
They wrote him off of TV. They wrote him off of TV before the ECW return for One Night Stand in 2005. They wrote him off with Taker beating the shit out of him with a tombstone.
Yeah.
On SmackDown.
Oh yeah.
That's probably his weakest period. Although he could be pretty entertaining as the SmackDown GM at times.
Right.
I think.
Since we passed it, his promo at One Night Stand 05, and if you've never seen John Cena, Rob Van Dam from One Night Stand 06, he plays a part in that match, and it's a very, I have that in my top 20 WWF title matches of all time. So there you go.
It's very memorable, certainly. Returns with Brock, summer 2012, and how long later is he with Punk, dude? Like 3 months.
September of 2012, because
Yeah, it's like Labor Day, I believe.
it was like a fall count anywhere match with Cena and Del Rio, and like Punk attacks him, and like the camera pans up and like Heyman's with him, and he like goes into a car with Heyman or something.
Yep.
The first couple years of his return, they're willing to like try stuff with him. We'll get to some of the failed experiments, but it's interesting. Alex, what are you going to say, mate?
Oh, just going into the date of this match, his stuff with Punk and the WrestleMania 29 match and everything. They dressed him up like Paul Bear on TV.
They did. Has he managed Curtis Axel at this point when we start with the third act here? Has that happened, or is that the next year? That's happened, right?
That's happened.
Yeah.
Starting in May of 13.
How did that, like, I'm not trying to be I genuinely, like, how did that go? Because I know the Cesaro thing, it seemed to me like
It lasted like 6 months. It didn't go very well.
Well, Curtis Axel, underrated WWF pay-per-view Payback 2013. Curtis Axel wins the Intercontinental title in the opening match, and that's it's in Chicago, and they get behind it, so it makes it seem like a bit of a moment. But yeah, it just didn't.
Wasn't it Father's Day too?
Yep,
I believe so.
Good call.
Yeah.
And is Ryback?
That's
after this.
Okay.
Ryback is so. If you remember the team of Rybaxel, they well,
of course.
Yeah. Ryback, Curtis Axel were Paul Heyman's guys in the feud with CM Punk.
Yeah.
And then
I wonder which side of that feud is gonna win.
Basically, Heyman dropped them because they sucked. Basically, that was like the storyline reason why he dropped them. And then and then they just stayed as a tag team. And then Heyman brought Brock back for the Big Show program at Royal Rumble 2014.
Okay, so
oh god,
with respect to Curtis Axel, who was obviously a good mechanic, I don't think he would have got. I don't think he was going to get over on the main roster with any manager. He was going to be an underneath guy, wasn't? I mean, I don't think that's unfair. I think that's pretty much been at this point accepted. I always thought we'll do this now before we move on.
Yeah,
I always thought he kind of sandbagged the Claudio pairing. I've
Agreed.
always thought this. Like,
Agreed.
I don't think he had any interest in it, and I think it shone through.
The king of swing.
Yeah. Now, obviously, he would claim otherwise if he was sitting here, but.
Yeah.
I always thought that.
It made for that one big pop the night after on the Raw the night after 30 where he introduced him, and then I always remember he wore almost like a Stunning Steve Austin robe at Money in the Bank that year where he was in the title match or whatever, and Paul Heyman came out with him, and I guess it was supposed to conjure up memories of yesteryear, but
that was the end of it right there. Basically, right around that time was that was Money in the Bank ladder match. Was it? It was basically over after that.
Yeah.
And then Cesaro, his 2014 was rough. It made it seem like the Andre was going to mean something. Then he got with Heyman. Then nothing happened, and then I can't remember what he did, but he pissed off the office somehow, so he lost to Ziggler on pay-per-view like 2 months in a row or some shit.
Yeah.
His
work
work
was
is
incredible that year. But he was his
Yeah.
booking was just
He's unbelievable in that run. His work, he's just it's a shame.
Matches with Ziggler were great. Yeah.
Oh yeah, those two are great chemistry. They're that triple threat with Tyson Kidd. These two wrestlers, he was much more happy to work with. Right? It was Brock Lesnar and CM Punk here. Of course, at this point, he has betrayed Punk and he is on Brock's side in this sort of Paul Lee guy civil war. We'll do this here. I think it's important. Like, we had to do a Brock match. I think that goes without saying. I think we all understand why folks are not rushing to celebrate the career of Brock Lesnar right now, and I think we all co-sign that hesitancy. I thought this was the best way to cover a Brock match because it's another Paul Heyman guy, and I think it's the best match. I think it's Brock's best match. I really believe. I think it's, top 3 for CM Punk. I think this is unbelievable. SummerSlam 2013, no DQ. We did a Grin along for this, August 18th. Man, this is such an interesting middle ground for Brock Lesnar because this is before he fully finds the Brock match, which was a great match, but was a clear formula.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like him kind of doing like an epic. It's still David versus Goliath, but they put in a lot of time, It's it's just wild to watch. And CM Punk, like, to me, the centerpiece of his status as a legend is his 2013, where he's clearly like kind of in hell in a lot of ways. But in that year, he has the Taker Mania match, the Cena Raw match, and this. It's like, dude, that's some of the best work of his entire career. And lest we forget, we also get some hysterical Paul Heyman physicality along the way. Oracle, SummerSlam 2013, one of the all-time great matches in my view. Brock Lesnar, CM Punk. Take it away.
Oh yeah, we were, back in August 2023. I think all four of us were doing a grin along on this match and popping huge for it. I think Manny was along for the ride for that one.
I think so.
Yeah, this is amazing stuff, man. I mean, I like the spots that always get to me are like Punk's knee, like Punk's knee, knees to Brock early on to the floor. Brock running into the steps when Punk has him to smash him with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Brock throwing the table, the announce table, pad on top of Punk and just doing a double stomp on it. And one of the most absurd things ever. Heyman is incredible in this. Punk looks like he's about to get the win with the go to. Heyman comes in and does like his little pussified version of a fucking, hammer smashes, and Punk beats the shit out of him, punches him. They milk that, puts him in. He's putting them in the whatever the fuck was his shitty ass submissioner called?
Anaconda Vice.
Anaconda, yeah.
Anaconda Vice. And just Brock with the chair shot, fucking the most killer chair shot ever to set up the finish of the match. Punk just takes a head dive first into the fucking chair in the F5.
The chair's upside down too for the way you want to land on it, so Punk just like fucking brains himself on it.
Yes. And there's a great like the post match is amazing, and like Brock has that like looks like like a fucking bear who's been in a fucking war. Just an amazing match. One of the best matches in the history of the company. You can go on about it, but like it's the peak of the Punk Heyman feud. They carry on for another 3 months after this, and
there's really nowhere to go after this.
Right, correct.
Yeah. It's I don't consider the 2010s to be a great decade for like WWE production, The shot where he has the submission on Paul Lee and Brock emerges with the aforementioned chair shot is like a legitimate horror movie deal. Like he arises and just crushes Punk. It's such a brutal moment. Punk also gets to do some MMA pretend stuff, which is very funny to look back in hindsight. Where he like switches to the armbar, he gets to be a shooter. God, what a match, Alex! My goodness, what did you think on rewatch here, brother?
Yeah, we did our grin along for this. This is my favorite pro wrestling event of all time, and this match is obviously hilariously. This show has two centerpieces. It's this, and of course the main event. I'm pretty sure I told this story on the grin along, but I've had for the past 15 years or so my big SummerSlam party every year, which you wear a Hawaiian shirt. I'll cook a bunch of food. You come over, and it's oftentimes the amount of non-wrestling fans outnumber the amount of wrestling fans. And this is the only match I can ever remember where people, the casuals to people who don't know anything about wrestling, by the end of it, everyone was crowded around the TV. Like, what the fuck's going to happen? Because it's a story that's so relatable from just like a primal perspective, but then also for like nerds like us, this is catnip, man. Because we've done a grin along, I'm not going to break the match down bit by bit, but I will say that a top 25 Fed match, I'd probably comfortably say it is within the top three matches either guy had. I would say top 2 for Brock and probably top 2 for Punk as well.
What would be your other, like, in your, just loosely, would it be Bryan for you with the other Brock match?
No, Brock's number one match is Roman at WrestleMania 31. That's the
right.
Yeah, So Brock, and here's potential other hot take. I think the AJ match is better than Bryan. I think they're 3 and 4, but I like the AJ match more. And then Punk, sorry, he's not topping Cena at Money in the Bank 2011. That's his keystone.
I think this is a bit of a match in a lot of ways, but that match is such magic. I don't disagree with that. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, there's 1,000 pro wrestlers who have achieved high stakes in wrestling that never had a match like that. And then just to round it out, Drew, a Hell in a Cell. That's a very special match. Mm-hmm. But anyway, this match is incredible. Both men are incredible in it. And our focus of this episode, Paul Heyman, has moments to also be incredible, both comedically and also like paying into it. When he comes in and he knocks Phil off the pin, there's this great shot where Punk looks up and then it cuts to Heyman, just his fucking big jowls and everything. And he goes, now wait a minute. He tells him, and one of the best working punches you will ever see in your life happens in this match, where it's so fucking visceral. Punk grabs him he uses his 3 fingers. He goes in his mouth and then one under the mandible, and then just punches him in the fucking nose. It is beautiful.
Dude, ironically, like it has big Memphis energy, that moment, doesn't it? Like, the hero is gonna punch this little prick in the face. It's awesome, dude.
And awesome. Punk is so good because he's like excited about it, and then like, you know, emotions get the better of him, and the whole time Heyman's just going, no, and then he punches him in the face, puts him in the Anaconda Vice. I don't know why I thought of this Oracle, but we were struggling to remember the name. In the dying days of Ring of Honor, Michael Bennett adopted that as his finish in an attempt to get heat. He was using the Anaconda Vice, you know, because that's what you do. That's where that company was at that point in time. And this also is the match where Brock gets Punk for the F5, and Punk grabs Heyman's tie, and Brock, it's choking me. And, you know, Brock's yelling back at him, like, go. And Joe said it already, so I don't want to harp on it too much. This is 1 year away from the John Cena SummerSlam main event, which is where Brock Lesnar basically found and in one match found and perfected the formula he was going to use for the next 10 years of his career.
Yeah.
And because of that, when you watch this match from a year prior and you see Brock Lesnar go up for a fucking go to sleep and he flies off CM Punk's shoulders and eats a knee to the face, it is so insane. And this crowd is just molten towards the end of this match, man. They're just going fucking nuts for everything. It's a singles match. It's CM Punk and Brock Lesnar. It's one of the crowning achievements, one of the best SummerSlam matches of all time. Top 3 in that respect. Like I said, top 3 in these two guys' careers. And for the purposes of circling it back to what we're talking about, Paul Heyman is a central part of this and plays his part. Like I said, I'm having fun laughing at some of like his histrionics and shit, but it's an accomplishment. That's the way I would word this match.
I think it is, if we were to just boil it down to one match for Paulie as a manager, I think this is it. I really do, because it's 2 guys that you associate him with strongly, and it's a classic. I mean, the Brock and Roman stuff when he's with Roman, the SummerSlam match is fun, but like that stuff is nowhere near as good as this. Yeah. You wouldn't put it on the same. So I think this is the Paulie match. By the way, that bump that Brock takes off the flying knee where he like throws himself head first onto the. When he first came back, dude, Brock would just like do stuff, right? Like just sort of to pop himself.
And the other thing too, with just in respects to watching this live, Brock, like that became like his thing, like where he would pretend like he's going to tap. This is the first match he ever did that in, where it made it seem like, holy fuck, what the fuck's going on? So just an all around special match, a magical night in the history of the World Wrestling Federation. And, a real gem in the crowns of both these guys.
Certainly so. Bobby, I know it's one of your favorites, mate. Anything you'd like to add? I know we've talked about this for like years.
Yeah, no, there's not much to add. It is a pretty incredible match. It's a formula for what Brock would go to do later on, while also kind of being the closest it was to his first run as far as like an in-ring performance. And, Heyman plays such a pivotal part, and this such a pivotal part of both guys' careers, obviously. And he's great in this. And, just excellent match.
Indeed, it is. It's a special one for sure. Incredibly, our next match is 9 years away. Most of that run, because we already discussed the kind of side missions with Axel and Claudio and it. Most of that run is just like him and Brock playing the same tune, right? Of like Brock being the champion and jumping up and down while Paulie cuts a very familiar promo.
Yep.
It was always a good promo. I do think by the end it was like increasingly apparent that they needed to move on and do something else.
Oh, spoiler.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the Brock run, which again obviously is very much more complicated now, and rightly so, but from a wrestling point of view, it looks good from like a match catalog perspective. Dude, the Brock thing got like excruciating. Yeah, it was a real problem. And it's crazy, man. All of this Bloodline, like it all starts with that one shot to close a pandemic SmackDown where it pans to Paul Lee and he's sitting with Roman. And it was a huge deal at the time, but we didn't know, like, obviously all that was going to come with that, and that Roman was going to work with Jey Uso and all this stuff. So
that's one of the only things of that fucking Thunderdome bullshit that I remember is that that's him. But yeah, the Brock thing. Speaking of the pandemic era, it's always funny that I always forget they got Heyman and Brock to come down to the Performance Center to do one of those jumping promos for the go home of fucking 36. Is that the one? Yeah. But yeah, to your point, you're exactly right. That run of Brock doing that match yielded results ranging from holy shit, like his stuff with AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan, to like, let's fucking move this along. Let's find something else to do.
Yeah.
We should note, before we get more into the Bloodline, that before he appeared alongside Roman Reigns, Paul had his return to creative power, as he and Eric Bischoff were brought in to resurrect innovation and creativity in the WWE office. Bischoff would lead SmackDown. And Paulie would lead Raw. On the first week after Bischoff's announced, return was announced, they did a whodunit, and we all pretended it was Bischoff's idea. He hadn't even got to work yet. That's what you do as a wrestling fan if you respect the business. Heyman, I think, will distance himself from this run, as he will do everything he can to distance himself. He will not fool me and anyone that watched it. He was booking a lot of that Monday Night Raw, dude. You can, and anyone who knows anything about Paulie's brain knows he was booking, because he did a video package where it was like Buddy, Andrade, and Aleister Black. And he was like the future of Raw. That was not a Vince McMahon creative move. I can tell you this with confidence. Was Vince overseeing him and driving him nuts? Yes. He was clearly Paul Lee had a lot of that show. Clearly.
Dude.
We saw a cuckold angle that turned into a lesbian angle.
Exactly,
dude, I was about to say there was a lesbian angle that closed out a Raw. There's nothing more fucking Paul Heyman than that, dude.
Yes. This is when Liv's character, she didn't know what she was doing. This was when Cedric Alexander got the classic Paul Lee gimmick of getting the shit kicked out of him every week. AJ got like very visibly de-emphasized, and that was like clearly a Paul Lee thing. Like you could tell because it was different. His whole role got changed.
Joe, what happened with AJ Styles and the Good Brothers and Paul Heyman?
What did you ask me? Look, that ain't my story to tell, but all I would say about that is there are a lot of people that think it was just like, oh, the boys got worked. Obviously, Vince fired them. Like, yeah, obviously Vince fired them. It was a lot more to it than that, and like Paul Lee, like consistently told the two bald gentlemen things that he had no interest in following up on, because of course he did. And I think, this is opinion, this isn't me representing anyone else's opinion, this is mine. I think he was not a big fan of the Good Brothers, not because of the wrestling. I think he knew for a fact he couldn't quite work them the way he could work Buddy Murphy and Cedric Alexander. That's my personal take on it. I'm not saying he thought they were a great tag team. He may have thought they sucked. I don't know. But Paulie is most dangerous when armed with guys who will follow his lead.
Yes.
And someone like Gallows has seen way too much to like believe Paul Heyman. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
I mean, like, look, I say this with love to him. I'm a big fan. Like, Buddy legitimately believed he's going to main event WrestleMania against Malachi Black. Like, he did it all over again. You know, there's the lore of him trading. Like, he pushed Braun and Bray before the draft so that he could convince SmackDown they wanted Braun and Bray, so that he could get like all the small guys. And, you know, he did all sorts of stuff. And again, to be clear, I'm not burying Paul for this. I thought this Raw was the most interesting Raw was in years. To be honest, it wasn't great. But he unlocked Randy. Randy was rolling again. It was good stuff. Some of this.
It was a very interesting time, and like
Yeah.
we're having some fun here. But I remember, to varying degrees, those Alistair and Buddy matches. They had one on Raw in particular, where the finish was that shit Buddy does, not Buddy, excuse me, Tommy Black does, where he puts the boot under your chin and lifts you up, and like this is 2019 Raw we're talking about, and the crowd was on their feet, which is like that was pretty rare in those days. So
he did that great angle with Samoa Joe where he like stopped the Authors of Pain and they put him and Kevin together. Do you remember that? That was cool. Like,
he also put that awesome Dom Ray feud that went to Survivor Series.
And like
you
this,
know what I mean? The Dom Ray versus
the Rock.
Mysterio.
This dude, he's the one who made Drew, like actually got Drew over the line as a babyface. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, it's I just I'll always just remember watching that Raw where it was the wedding that ended with a lesbian angle, and I was like, oh, well, I wonder who's writing this shit.
He honestly did a good job. I just think it's something no one remembers fondly, so he's actively distanced himself from that time. And like, whatever, I get it.
I think he was all like, a lot of the credits gone to fucking Brock, like individually, the 2020 men's Rumbles match. But like, there's a lot of Heyman's fingerprints all over that match, and that's like one of the better Rumble matches of the past decade. So
another one that's going to go under the radar now, especially because he's not there anymore. He got MVP in the Rumble. MVP still like had a relationship with Paul, and he wanted his son to see him wrestle in a WWE ring. So MVP got in the 2020 Rumble, and next thing, he was the main character on Raw because Paulie wanted him to be on TV. So he did the whole thing with Lashley, and that's been a whole new run for him, and a great run for him. So there's a lot of good stuff from that time. And I think, Paulie Light has got into a really comfy pattern where he's really involved in creative, but he's not listed as the top guy. So anything good, he gets credit for. Anything bad, you ignore him. I don't think he was comfortable with Raw being like his show for a while there when it wasn't fully his show, right? It was maybe mostly his show, but it was certainly not fully his show. You could, still Vince's show. So that's an interesting time. The Bloodline kicks off. Roman and Jey Uso have those matches that like launched this whole thing, which is over 4 years ago now. I always wonder, like, the what if, the butterfly effect of if Roman just works with Bray as intended and he doesn't do the Jey Uso thing. How does Jey Uso even become, you know what I'm saying? Like, Jey Uso's the number one merchandise man now. Like, it's unfathomable. Jimmy eventually returns. They're together. They win the tag straps. They're a trio. Obviously, later Solo would come in like 4 months after this. Here's the crazy thing about this that I think goes understated. Because Roman hardly worked on TV, the match we're about to cover is a bit of a collector's item. They only have like 4-5 trios matches in this whole run, Roman and the Usos on TV. The rest of them are house shows or dark main events. Imagine how many bumps they're taking those. Dude, this is like, you would think this would be the thing you do every week on TV, but Roman didn't wrestle that much, did he? So this is just like one of very few. It is, of course, the Bloodline. Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, taking on Drew McIntyre and OK Bro, as Matt Riddle creeps in here to make sure that all of these matches involve somewhat, I'm going to leave it there. May 8th, 2022. May 8th, 2022. WrestleMania Backlash. That's the easiest way to realize this was a different time, as well as the entrances and general presentation. The Babyface All-Stars, the Bloodline. This is an incredible snapshot of a moment in time, because especially with Riddle being there. Randy is 50 pounds lighter. Drew Mack is a white meat babyface. Jimmy Uso can run. Dude, these men, they were so young. They had so much ahead of them, and Matt Riddle's in the WWE. Just fascinating stuff. Bobby, you were very excited when I suggested this. I wanted us to get more of a broad Bloodline representation. To me, it was either Roman versus Sammy or this. This gave us some variety. What did you make of this on rewatch, brother?
Yeah, I thought this match ruled when it happened, and I thought it ruled when I watched it again today. Little too long in the beginning, but that's just kind of how it goes. And, Roman waits as long as he can to get in, but once he gets in, man, it's just, let's go. And him and Randy, they're clearly setting up for that. I'm still mad we never got a singles match there. It's a great time. And I remember enjoying this whole show quite a bit. This was a time when it was at least the pay-per-views are good. That's something to look forward to. And it's just this match ruled. And that stat you said about the Bloodline not wrestling that much is surprising because they would grow to kind of lean into that a little bit more after this, and
Yeah.
just kind of in general, like but you're not wrong where Roman wasn't on TV, and but yeah, no, I think this is an excellent match, and really just kind of like you said, a snapshot in time because most of these are still big players, and it's a completely different game from 2 years ago.
Dude, this is what, 2 weeks before Double or Nothing 2022?
Yeah.
Things were about to change, bro.
Yep.
Yep. This is like one of those moments, like if only people knew, if only we knew when we were covering it. It's just wild, like to think about.
Yeah, I mean, Cody just got there too, obviously.
Yeah.
The Mercedes and Naomi stuff's about to happen.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But more important than any of that, Oracle, Jimmy Uso can run.
Yeah.
What did you think of this, bro?
Yeah. The first half of this match is like whatever, but man, the finishing stretch is outstanding, man.
Yeah.
Randy's RKO, I remember popping huge for that, watching this live, and like it still got me.
On Roman.
He hit Roman with the RKO. Just incredible stuff.
Yeah.
The finishing run is awesome. They do like a really good Shield-esque like chaos spot moment, where everybody hits their shit and like dives to the floor, like the Uranagi through the table, and then like the dive and shit, and then Riddle hits a super RKO, and then like immediately gets like fucking speared to hell. Great finish, and there's a great shot because they show him Paul Heyman. He just 1, 2, 3. So it's you get like an awesome shot of Heyman at ringside counting the 3. Typical Bloodline post-match shenanigans and Roman's all smug and shit. But yeah, this was very good. And it's crazy to think about the fact that like where we are now, 2.5 years later, which is quite a while later if you really think about it. But
it didn't used to in the 2010s though, 2.5 years, like nothing would change. But now we're back to
It's changed. It's changed significantly now, very much so. That'll be different in 2 months when Bob's buddy comes back and
Two
Kevin
of those
gets rehired and whatnot. So,
Alex, you hadn't seen this match, and not only you hadn't seen it, you were like, you had no awareness of what I was referencing when I was talking about this, right? Because we were putting it together, you and I, and you was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what you're signing me up for here, but what did you? I'm intrigued. I could see this going in one way or the other, one extreme or the other. What did you make of this?
Oh, dude, the way you phrased it in the group chat was you called it like a PWG trios, excuse me. Yeah. And like I was watching this, I was like, oh yeah, this is absolutely the match that main events the second night of Bola, like an unannounced like, 6-man tag that has like literally like they would do that with Mount Rushmore against just like fucking a random conglomerate of wrestlers. And this is a hoot. Bob, I didn't know you were at this show.
No, I was not.
Well, who had the sign that said I paid to see Liv?
The way that Bob just willingly played ball with that was really
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, good for you, Bob.
Yeah, that was smooth as butter. We transitioned that collar and elbow into an arm wringer just perfectly, man. That was beautiful. Look, there's no, as much as we joke about the fucking Bloodline and how ridiculous it's become, this is just tremendous. The entrance, Roman's song. I don't like the new song with like the fucking clacking drums.
This song is one of the great themes ever, Mike.
Roman Reigns.
Dude, the WrestleMania entrance with this was amazing.
39?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah, I was like fucking.
You were there.
Yeah, flagpole at full mast at that with the pianos and shit going off.
WrestleMania 39 was unbelievable, dude. Especially in hindsight, now that we can be more generous to the ending. What a great show.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite wrestling trip I've ever been on. But anyway, the entrance here, and when Roman had the 2 belts, looked so cool, and the Usos behind him with their fucking tag titles, and Heyman, the ones to the sky and shit. one of the things I didn't realize. Okay, so I know it never happened, but at this point in time, people were convinced, if I remember correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that SummerSlam was going to be Orton and Roman in a singles match. That's what people thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
But really now in hindsight, you're watching this and like, oh no, they're already building to the fucking Scottish show with Drew and Roman.
If they knew like how badly Randy, because Randy's gone like 2 weeks after this. I wonder if they knew he was going to be done soon. I wonder. We guess we'll never. I guess we can find out.
I mean, to the only time in his career that I can recall, Randy Orton has a mustache in this match. So it was,
he's got like that weird like.
He's got the Rick Rude WCW thing where it's kind of like shaved down, but it's still like pronounced.
Alex Mattel made an elite with that look, brother. There's a mustache, Randall.
Of course they did. And, from what I've heard, Tony Khan's in the process of buying it along with 10,000 other action figures to sign a contract with Zack Ryder, but we'll see how that goes. Paul Heyman doing his best Burgess Meredith at ringside. We're full on Paul Heyman as the Penguin, just barking out at ringside. My tribal chief. My note here says rest in piss Kevin Dunn, because like I was getting like angry watching this match.
Yeah.
Every fucking strike or something. It was a fucking cut. It was making me
seriously, guys. How did we tolerate this at all? This show, the way this is produced, the whatever the fuck they call it, the graphics got when Riddle does his entrance. This show was horrifying to look at. What was happening?
Okay, is there a reason from like a Peacock perspective? Why was the WrestleMania logo the logo for this show again? Or was it just them saying, "Oh, it's going to be like WrestleMania again"?
Yes, they actually called it WrestleMania Backlash. Yeah.
And at the end there, I forgot, because they thought they'd mix it up a little bit. I remember at this point in time, Vince and KD got that fucking boner for doing the world class tag cam, where they'd bring the camera to the corner just for someone to make the tag, and then they would go back to cut. It was, dude, reprehensible. You're right. How did we ever tolerate this? But yeah, Randy gets a tremendous hot tag. That RKO counter to the Superman punch is phenomenal. I don't know how many more times he's going to come up, and Oracle can understand what I'm talking about. Having just paid a visit to the Heritage Inn in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's unfortunate with the whole Matt Riddle situation for multiple reasons, and here he's even in this time period, like the crowd was still like really behind him, and when he was doing his offense there, they were getting behind him and shit. And it's just a bummer for, again, many reasons. But Heyman is awesome with this whole "my tribal chief," yes, my tribal chief, and the Usos are great here. They call him main event Jey Uso at one point. I didn't realize they were already doing that. Yeah.
2022 Heyman is like, that's like his full on like, yes, my tribal chief. That's like when he was like at his most ridiculous, like in terms of the Bloodline stuff, because like he gets, in my opinion, more subdued in a way in 2023 when like they do like the Bloodline Civil War. Like he's like still obviously like Heyman, but like 2022 is like the peak of him being like, oh yes, my tribal chief, like being ridiculous.
Alex, to fill in the gaps, the main event Jey Uso thing came from when Jimmy was injured, and he was main eventing SmackDown against like Dragon and whoever was working with Roman worked with Jey on TV in the main.
Jey won the Andre during the pandemic era, right?
Yeah. At that point, he's firmly main event.
WrestleMania 37, the WrestleMania SmackDown.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Going by
that's where like the SmackDown and Raw were still in the Thunderdome, but that was the Mania. That was like the half-attended stadium show, right?
Yes. Yeah, the where it rained.
The Bucks Stadium.
What a time to be alive. Previously covered on a Grin Grappler, Bobby Lashley. Check it out. But this is a hoot. This is I know in my mind, pay-per-views still exist as the big four, and then in your houses that plug the gaps in between. And to me, this is how in your houses should be main evented: is you take 3 guys versus 3 guys, and so like no one really loses, that type of shit. And so this was a blast. Really liked this. A very fun way to close.
Yeah, to your point there, I agree. I love this as like a play call, like the big all-star. It's just fun, right? It's such an easy watch. The lads take it pretty easy in the first half because the people are with them anyway. Like they get a lot of juice. To your point about building to Drew and Roman, they get a lot of juice out of just those two going face to face, right? And like that stuff's money.
They don't actually like. What's the extent? Drew hits the Claymore at one point, and then Roman slams him through the table, but they don't really do any like elongated grappling.
Roman doesn't really do elongated grappling with anyone in this, does he? He just Roman Reigns is legitimately one of the best I've seen. Like the way he'll work the people is amazing because really what he's doing is not bumping or doing anything, but like I saw it when I was at Civil War, dude. Like the crowd did the thing, stand up if you hate Roman, and he sat down on the apron. Like he's got so good at that stuff, and it's so funny because he used to work so hard to like the wrong reaction, Now he just does this. The Usos, I have fun about Jimmy looking like a different man here. Seriously, as the engine of the Bloodline that actually went on the road and worked the main events out of these house shows, the Usos left a piece of themselves in this run, dude. Like, Jey Uso is more over than ever, and God love him. He is, like, visibly slower now. Like, this run depleted them. They had, how many times did they close those house shows in tag team main events, versus Drew and Sheamus or whoever it may be?
And that was when Jimmy's knee was like,
gone. I really think
you got to think it was just 3 years before this. They were working like the best in the world in Shane McMahon. They were just having those knockdown dragouts.
The classics, The we mentioned Matt Cardona, Nick. He always popped him and Hawkins, him and Myers. They always like celebrate the Usos' current glory because they think like we always they've been doing WWE for how long now? The Usos got 13 years or whatever.
Almost 15 this summer.
Yeah,
dude. They were like the top team in WWE, and they had like one set of action figures as like down since day, and now they get like a new toy every 2 months. And the Hawkins and Wright always pop for it.
Dude, they were fucking awful when they debuted.
Yes, I know, but they were terrible then. Then they get good in like 2013, 2014.
Yeah,
their peak is actually the original. Down since that run is their best stuff.
Oh yeah,
but this is what they'll be.
Yeah,
but this is what they'll be remembered for, like easily, because of course, like. But
they both got fucking those Ultimate Elites out of it. Those figures like $40. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying, dude. They get like there was I think it was November. The top selling figure of the month or the week, at least in ringside, was the No Yeet Jimmy Uso singles figure.
And they got those retros. I think if I understood correctly, both Usos, Sammy, and Kevin all got Ultimate Elites for the 39 main event.
Yeah. Lest we forget main event of WrestleMania. Good point. That's a good call. We should probably bring that up. Man, tremendous stuff. The big, it's a very simple match. It's honestly a house show trios with a big finish added on, right? Where they really go crazy on the finish. The timing on that is great. The Usos are always great on those late saves. This is when Orton is literally just a like living, breathing hot tag, and the place is all in. A lot of people seem to think Randy's overness has only spiked since this recent return. It was literally happening here. Like, Oracle, you were at that show where they celebrated his career.
Uh-huh.
This is when he was getting crazy over, wasn't it? This was a thing at the time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Fun note to end on. It makes for a hilarious comparison with the Dangerous Alliance. Like, 2 different worlds, but both super successful, and obviously both with Paul Heyman at the helm. Since then, all that's happened, the regime change, they will now be, and, again, fair or unfair, obviously Cody's a huge part of it, but I think this boom, this era we're living through right now, they're going to be the centerpiece of that historically. I think it's fair to say, right? Them and Cody are going to share that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we can, with fear of talking out of turn, I think it's pretty obvious that Heyman has his hands on a lot of the creative. I think it goes without saying he's certainly had an impact on Roman Reigns, who does business very differently now and has had great success as a result.
I think, if you told me that the WrestleMania 39 main event was decided by one person because they knew I could get another year out of this, and then maybe after that I'll get another year out of it, and it was Paul Heyman that was like, hey, you probably shouldn't lose to this kid this time around, I'd buy that completely.
Yeah. There is a take that Ibu and I get into on the Christmas special, which is a week away, but the holiday special, 12 Grins.
Is that Ibu of Wrestling Purists?
Fightful, actually. We talked about how, and this is not something we all like, but I think we have to talk about it. The new trend in wrestling has been the cutscene pro wrestling, the cinema pro wrestling. Now, we can have fun with that. In the pandemic, the big thing was these cinematic matches are going to be they're going to be the top thing in wrestling. And that wasn't true. But there was something that came from that in these like cinematic scenes and moments and all this very high drama stuff that, fair or unfair, like or dislike it, it's the thing in the industry, right? We all agree on this. Like the Bloodline videos that they clip up that have just those moments are like, to some people, that's wrestling now. And I think it would be insane not to look in Paul's direction on that. And I think that's part of, look, you know, a lot of it to me has had some
I'll be over here watching Josh Barnett versus Yuji Nagata. You know, I'll be fine over here.
And look, it's not for any of us in particular, but we have to be honest. Part of what Paulie's story is the way he's evolved and changed with the times.
Yes. And
he has found a style here. And again, maybe it's not him. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd be very surprised, to be honest with you. To me, it's clear he's found a style that resonates with young people. I think, and this, Alex, this will really pop you. And I talk about this in the Christmas special. I think it directly relates to the culture and the fan sort of identity that came with the Marvel pictures. I truly believe this. The Marvel craze of picking Easter eggs out of every single film and like adding them all up, this is like wrestling's equivalent of that, which is like your peak fandom, right, Alex? You love that stuff.
Man, we're getting close to 3:30. You're just trying to get me fucking going off here at this point in the. Yes, I can see that.
You see what I'm saying? And the guy we should credit for this quickly. Yes, Alex.
Oh, sure. I was about to say, is that what you, myself, Oracle, and Bobby probably want out of wrestling? No. But yes.
No.
And we should credit, seriously, Bray Wyatt was actually probably the first person that realized that shit was a wrestling fan thing.
Yes.
And people laugh at it. Dude, he made a return with fucking QR codes and people lost their shit. Like, whatever you think of Bray's work, he definitely saw it as well. There is a link there. I'm telling you guys, it's there. But nonetheless.
I can't take too much of the high ground on that too, because like I still like the apex, like the peak of that cinematic shit. That thing him and Cena did at the COVID Mania is like my favorite example of that. So yeah.
Honestly, it's like anything that's genre or style. When done right, it can be good. When done badly,
What a lot of people want to do nowadays in any realm of fandom is they want to look beyond what is in their face and find something that's deeper in there.
Yes.
And so if you give that's Heyman and this whole bloodline thing, they could their ring finger will be in one position and people will be like, well, hold on a minute. And then, you know, old fucks like me are just like, kick someone in the face, dude. You know?
Right. A good example to me, so I don't like the stuff like the Cody and Roman promo, which was like bad Paulie all over it. I can't watch that stuff. It's not for me.
That was bad. I also don't like the Punk one before WarGames. I thought that was
an
bad.
Example of the cinematic wrestling where it goes cutscene heavy that I did like. Do you guys remember when the Usos turned on Roman and they had that extended like TV drama dialogue where Jimmy was like, fuck him. You know, when Jimmy's like, enough with Roman, they're talking back and forth. That stuff does.
That was at a Scotty show, right?
Yeah. Do you remember, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, it was a full-on cutscene. That did connect for me. So it's a scale and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
We have to talk about it because it's like that's what Paulie's doing right now, man. I mean, it is what it is.
The one at Rumble 23 where Sammy hits Roman the chair is tremendous too.
Perfect example. That's totally that style, and it's an incredible angle. Yeah, it can be done well. I think they're getting a little bit too much dip on their chip right now, but that's what happens when you get over. Nonetheless, let's call out some other matches from Act 3. We'll just this the obligatory. There's a lot of Brock ones. AJ, Bryan, Finn, Roman.
Oh, man. The Finn match is great.
A lot of the Brock stuff that you guys already know about. I don't think we should do too much of that because, like, you know, too bad enough piece of shit tonight.
You're gonna skip over both the Goldberg matches. Heyman is electric in those. Yeah.
I should not. They're both great.
He's great. He's amazing at Survivor Series. Oh my god!
Yeah. The SummerSlam 4-way.
Specific to Heyman's involvement. his involvement in the build to the Samoa Joe match at Great Balls of Fire.
Superb segment. I think Samoa Joe would be near the top of the list of imagine Paul Lee got a guy like that in their prime, like what we would have done with him, If ECW lives, those guys are obviously going to be part of that, right? Like, no doubt.
Samoa Joe is basically Taz, but could actually beat someone's ass.
Yeah. I didn't say that, Taz. Pete, that wasn't me.
That was my Violent J. The ICP shoot review. Violent J goes, "Fuck you, Taz. I'll fight you." And then Sean Oliver moves on to the next question, and Violent J goes, "I was just kidding, Taz. I was trying to look cool on here. I don't want to fight you."
Yeah, I don't really want to fight Taz. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. Scott brings it up just back at there. Not a good match, but the Undertaker streak ending match is obviously significant and give Paul like 6 years of material. Other Roman matches: Sami Zayn, Drew McIntyre in Cardiff, Cody Rhodes, part 1 and 2. He's at ringside for The Rock's return to the ring, which still is going on, I believe. What other matches, boys? Any from this third act here that we should call out before we wind down? My God, what a program this has been! My goodness. And Oracle mentioned the table bump. Yep.
I don't really care for any of the Roman Brock matches outside of 31, but there's that one in Saudi where he's like the centerpiece, right? Where he throws the belt in the ring, but you don't know who he throws it to.
Oh,
yeah. That match is good.
Yeah, I like that one.
The Mania 31 is a classic. Crown Jewel's good, and the Last Man Standing at SummerSlam is very fun. And
we should also,
but like none of that ever came close to the 31 main event.
No. I don't want you to. I don't want you to think I said that. It's not. But if I'm picking the 3 best matches, those are the 3.
I see.
Yeah, we've put Paul Lee over enough tonight that we can talk about. This was very funny when he's got the sweaty hands and can do the handcuffs at the Rumble.
That was funny.
Yeah.
That was awesome. WarGames 24, he has the big cinematic moment where he gets Punk and Roman to play together, which of course is God.
I was asleep. I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's good. Good match.
It's not from this era, but it's like kind of what I wanted to end on. The Paul Heyman is wrestling personality going all the way back to the ECW days of the first pay-per-view they did and the Transformer Blue, and Paul Heyman, everyone in the arena had to quiet down so he could speak to the crowd. And there's only like one picture that exists of this because like the lights are dead and shit. And it's Paul Heyman thanking everybody for being there. And like that to me speaks to all the way up to what we are here now. Is like he understands how to butter his bread to, keep the machine rolling, so to speak.
Yes, indeed. It almost seems foolish to ask final thoughts on the legacy of Paul Heyman because, this isn't something we're focusing on his arm drags, right? This has all been about that. I guess
he'll outlast us, brother.
My final question, and feel free to add anything to his legacy you'd like to, but I guess, what do you think Paul Heyman's going to be most remembered for? That's my question. To me, that's like the most interesting way to close this out. Bob, I'll go to you, and if you want to add anything else, go for it.
I mean, immediately it kind of feels like the Bloodline just because of, it's going to be the most recent. It's going to be some of the most successful. The ECW stuff, obviously they still make a ton of documentaries about that, but I don't know how much further that's going to go. They kind of seem to be kind of starting to separate from that whole thing a little bit.
You say that, but they just did an ECW nostalgia show in 2024. So
that is true. Yeah, if I had to guess, probably the Bloodline stuff, but it is tough because, he's had so much of an impact over the past 35 years, we covered, and
yeah. We should note he went in the Hall of Fame this year. He had a very interesting speech that ranged from incredible to slightly embarrassing. He got stuck on the phrase cancel culture, which was alarming and totally in line with who you'd expect him to be at this point in his life. Oracle, any final thoughts, and how would you approach that question about who you think what he's going to be most remembered for?
For me, it's always going to be ECW, just because I grew up thinking of him as the guy who made ECW and made it sort of rebel company. So that's always going to be how I identify him. It depends on the generations, people. I think generations, I think a lot of people who are kind of my age up to like my brother's age will kind of identify him as the
Yeah.
ECW guy. I think people that are like under 25 or like in their, high school or college now will probably identify him as the Wiseman and the Bloodline,
Yeah, the
that's probably what they will identify
Yeah.
him as.
I agree.
But to me, it's always he's just ECW was like, in his booking style and like his eye for talent and things of that nature. What came out of that is what I'll always remember him as. Forward.
Yeah, he is 59. God knows how long he intends
That's
to do
it?
this. Right, exactly.
No way.
Yeah, he's 59 years old. 65 years born. God knows how long he could be doing this for another 10 years. Like seriously,
Yeah.
he could be. So the question will be,
My boy.
Well, he's planted the seeds a little bit with Braun Breaker already, so.
yeah.
Oh shit! His birthday's 9/11. That sucks.
Yeah.
Well, at the time it wasn't as such. But anyway, the question will be, Bob, when you and I are there in 20 years, waiting in line at WrestleCon to meet Paul E. Dangerously, what will be the photo most handed to him? That's really what this comes down to. Alex, where do you stand on this, and any final thoughts on Paul Heyman? Take us home, brother.
Oh shit. Well, I think that Oracle just had our first drop of Wiseman, which Paul Heyman is an inspiration to people who are young fans and want to get into the business. Just from his like start as a photographer and whatnot. But the difference is 11 out of 10 average wrestling fans don't have the intuition and the guile of a Paul Heyman. He's certainly a one of one in that scenario. As far as his legacy goes, I can't say it could be anything but ECW for like all of our jokes and like the idea that there is still a living section of wrestling fans that think Tommy Dreamer is one of the greatest baby faces that ever lived. Like just stuff like that. That's such a novelty. But even like me as someone who like was in it, like the BWO was a successful act. Like, that takes someone who has an idea for something that'll work for a certain audience and has, I used the phrase earlier, but their finger on the pulse. And ECW was something that only existed in its time. There are companies now that try to present themselves as being like a modern version of ECW or something like that, and that just is not something that exists. And Heyman created something very important at an important time, and I think the proof is in the pudding, in the sense of like, think of like, legitimately it gave us future WWF champions like Rob Van Dam and shit like that. But anyway, him personally, he was able to work his way and make acquaintances along the way to help him further down the line. He was a businessman in a business that, like, as much as, hey, fuck it, I'm just here for the money. Like, there's people that aren't like actual Rolodex business people. Like Paul Heyman the entire time was just cramming his wallet with business cards of like, okay, later down the line, I can call this number, I can call this number, I can call this number. And, when he got to the point where he established himself enough for reputation, people were calling him after he used up said business cards and shit. Like, he's someone that people really should. And again, this is not all positive because we talked about the slimy side of him as well.
Yeah.
But like, you should watch how he, like, his ascension and how he made his like niche in the wrestling business, because that's business. And now, he's got a really good eye for who's going to be the top guy or who is the top guy. The Brock Lesnar thing, there's no way that can be under or overstated. Of like, Brock Lesnar is legitimately one of the biggest stars wrestling seen in the past 25 years. And Heyman got his fucking hooks into him before he even became something. He was like, okay, like like a wild horse. He jumped on and he was like, all right, this is where we're going to go. And Roman Reigns, I think, is a similar thing. I think he found him at a time where he was very frustrated with things that had happened in his career. And he's like, all right, well, you can do this if you play these cards and I'll be there alongside you. He's smart. And again, I'm sorry, but you're talking about an industry where people typically aren't that sharp or cunning as he is. And so I think there's a lot to his legacy. I think if you're someone who just wants to watch the show, he's just an endlessly entertaining character. And if you're someone like a pervert like the four of us that just is so infatuated with this industry, like thinking about the mentality and reading all the behind the scenes stories of him, he's just an endless provider of novelty, I think, in that perspective. From that perspective, I should say. So Paul Heyman is Sid once said, after you talk to him, you have to make sure you're still wearing your shirt and you have your wallet in your back pocket. And like, I believe that wholly. He's not someone I'd probably ever approach for a picture and an autograph, or ask for a story or something. But from this, where I'm sitting right now, someone who's very fascinating, and I think it shows in that, man. Even technical difficulties and shit. We've gone 3.5 hours talking about this guy, man, and there's so much to that story.
There is, and it's not even complete yet, which is a crazy thought. We joke about it a lot, Alex. We also do it to pop ourselves to Paul Giamatti, but like seriously, what a film he would be, right? Like genuinely, my God.
He once told my father to piss in the ocean.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that'd be the first scene.
My dad trying to pop himself on the beach at Asbury Park, New Jersey. Wonderful town, I'm sure. Screamed out, "I have to take a piss." And Paulie was out there and he goes, "Why don't you just piss in the ocean?"
Yeah.
Jason Momoa is Roman Reigns, by the way.
One of the most interesting characters in wrestling history, and that is no mean feat considering some of the people that come through wrestling. Someone who I think, I don't know how well some of this stuff will age. I truly don't know. Like I wouldn't even like to imagine the stories we don't know about Paul Heyman. You know what I'm saying? Like considering what we know about him. But man, significant, groundbreaking, still innovating, he's like still central in the industry. Alex, I'm gonna hit my line on this. He's one of one, brother. He's one of one.
He is. I don't know if we mean that as a positive sense as we said about other guys, but yeah. A complicated legacy, but one of the most interesting people, certainly. Folks, we hope you've enjoyed this. We had a shaky start tonight. We had technical difficulties. Oracle was a little late. It was a lot going on. Bobby was the only one here who was just steady as ever. We've steadied the ship. We've followed Bob's lead. I think we've had a hell of a show. It was a Solo Sikoa opener. That's for sure.
Well, I'm not sure that was necessary, but this has been, in all seriousness, fellas, before we look ahead to 2025, which obviously is going to start in, unfortunate fashion, but what a year this has been for the Grappler. We started with Fit Finley. We celebrated Gal Kim. We talked Kurt Hennig, Terry Goldie, the It Factor, Bobby Roode. Man, that feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Mick Foley, the 7 squashes of Sid, Double J, Jeff Jarrett, who is, by the way, the runner-up to Alexa Bliss when it comes to drawing power on this platform. Alexa Bliss, who the number of that show will never not be funny and will live forever in LNG lore. The Enforcer, Arn Anderson, Scott Hall, Ravishing Rick Rude, and finally, our very first manager, Paulie Dangerously. Thank you, fellas. What a great year it's been. Seriously, this show is something we all take more seriously than we need to, and I'm glad we got to do another year of it. And we're not closing here. This is not the finale.
No,
it's the end of the series. End of the season, but not the series, right? 2025. Alex, the floor is yours on this one, brother. I had the Alexa Bliss episode, Drew Us a Big House. The sequel, of course, Shane McMahon kicking off 2025. Tell the people about it, Alex.
I can't even remember how the timing of it worked out. Do this then, we'll do this then. But anyway, hell of a year. But we will be beginning 2025 in the spirit of the Royal Rumble, a very special time of the year. Oh, wait, that's in February. God damn, nothing's sacred anymore, for crying out loud. Anyway, I think by the end of the next episode of the Grin Grappler, you will know that we have entered into Grin Grappler canon the greatest big match wrestler of all time, and a very important player in several eras of professional wrestling. That is the one, the only Shane McMahon. Joe will eventually enter this lineup on our Twitter account, but on the LNG Twitter account. But we're going to be talking Test at SummerSlam 99. Of course, we're going to be talking Kurt Angle, King of the Ring 01, top 10 Fed match of all time. Got a couple of maybe lesser known ones sprinkled in there. AJ Styles at WrestleMania 33, of course. And surprisingly, one I've never seen. We'll be closing out the episode with Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre against The Undertaker and Roman Reigns, known as the Graveyard Dogs, I believe, for their one and only tag outing. And we'll have my Shane McMahon jersey on, and I'll bring my Shane McMahon figures to the party. But very much looking forward to it. Cannot wait. But as far as 2024 goes, it's been a hell of a time, Joe. And this is the show where you let me kind of run amok, and I appreciate it. And Bobby and Oracle, I appreciate having y'all as the peanut gallery to do it too. So it's been a great year.
It has. Feels right that we close the year out with an extended epic here, approaching 4 hours, folks. We hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to do some plugs, then we're going to go out here because it's late and we still have a post show, maybe. Bob O'Neill, what would you like to plug, brother?
Grindication tomorrow night after Dynamite. Me, Oracle, Novi, and Brainbuster. Do we know what won the poll?
I'll check right now.
Okay.
I'll check right now. The poll.
But yeah, that'll be a fun time.
Is currently WCW Worldwide December 93 is currently in the lead.
Okay.
Currently in the lead. Now it's 3%, so you can still vote on that, and then I guess the guys will call it whenever they call it. I will not be on that program, but you got a hell of a lineup waiting for you. Oracle, you will be there, of course.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to promote, brother?
So I will be back next week after tomorrow's Grindication for a triple header. But before I promote that, I will promote the Ring of Honor Final Battle Grin Along, maybe, possibly, or preview coverage show.
Grin along, yeah.
Grin along on Friday. This Friday, December 20th. Next week, the week after that, I will have a triple header. I will be for the flagship for the World's End preview show. Joe will not be there. I will be. I will be at the World's End Grin Along. Joe probably will be there.
I think so, yeah.
And then on December 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern, the final session of the I'm drawing
the obscurities of the Ruthless Aggression era.
The obscurities of the Ruthless Aggression era. Main events, which will include an Undertaker and Festus bout. So be prepared for that, folks.
Fuck yes.
The match rules.
So yeah,
it does. Yeah.
5 p.m. Eastern time on December 29th.
Beautiful. Alex, the Contrarians, where I will soon be making my debut for an incredible project we've discussed, the Ultimate Fighter, and all that will come with that. The carnage that ensues, the loyalty that emerges with it. Tell the people about that, and then also anything else that's happening in the land of the Contrarians.
We are thecontrarians.com. The Contrarians on all of your favorite podcatchers. It's a tomato looking himself in the mirror and seeing a nasty green splotch. We recently dropped an episode on The Apartment, the Shirley MacLaine film from 1960, which is, if you've never seen it, fucking wonderful. It's a Christmas movie as well, so you got that. And then coming soon, the first episode to drop on January 17th of 2025 is Tough 20, the series with myself, Joe, Julio, and of Twitter infamy, not Dr. Death Steve. we'll be doing a 14-part series on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. Very much looking forward to it. Joe and I have talked about maybe some celebrations to kick it off, or kickoff party or something. We'll see how that comes along, but just stay tuned. Like I said, we are thecontrarians.com and at Contrarian Prime on all social media. Subscribe to us there and stay tuned. There's a lot of good things coming. A lot of talk of Chris Lieben, Josh Koscheck, Sam Hoger. The whole gang's going to be there.
So much fun. I can't wait for people to hear it. And as Alex said, we're going to try and do some Grin stuff around that. Now, folks, this Friday, after Grin Indication tomorrow, and on Thursday, there's Relight the Fuse with the Young Guns. Friday is a final battle Grin Long. I may not be there. I do not know yet for sure. This is a chaotic time here at Holbert headquarters. There's a 1-year-old running around. She does not seem very well versed in Ring of Honor currently. I may try and change that. I don't know if it would be the best place to start. I don't know what's going on. It's very chaotic. I feel like Jack Crosby. It's a lot going on. But we do have a great lineup. We have the confirmed shoot. We have Chuck. We have Marcus. We have Novi, and we have Kate. And that's a hell of a lineup this Friday. Final battle. If you want to watch the Athena match and you need friends to get through the rest of it, fair. They will be there for you, live and free on this very platform, Friday night, the flagship. Next Friday, as Oracle mentioned, is World's End Preview. Lest we forget, though, December 24th, the holiday special, 12 Grins of Christmas. We're looking at a 4-hour show for that, too. This thing's getting out of hand. It's out of control. Bobby, you've filmed some stuff for that. It's quite the fiasco.
Oh, yeah.
We're hoping you're going to see a lot of familiar faces in that show, but you're definitely going to get a lot of Ibu and I talking while being very tired. So that's December 24th. It's been a wild month because we actively front loaded a lot of the stuff because I knew this was going to get crazy for me in the middle of the month. So a lot's gone on. Obviously, it'll be a slight exhale, which for us just means we'll do 4 shows a week instead. But if I do not speak to the folks on the free platform again before Christmas itself, obviously I'm going to do the holiday special, but fuck, that'll be ridiculous. Who knows what that's going to look like. We very much are thankful for the support in 2024. We came back in 2024. We launched Gold in 2024. We talked about Fit Finley and Gail Kim in 2024. It's been a great, great year, and you guys have been there every step of the way. So whatever happens, watch those shows, whether I'm there or not, but we are very, very thankful, and we appreciate the support. All right. With that in mind, at 3 hours and 47 minutes on the clock, I think we're ready to wrap this here. Folks, please like the video, unless you've liked it already, in which case, listen to Bob's advice. If you can leave a comment, odd numbers. If you can leave a comment, please do. If not, I get it, it's very late. Have a great week. Have a great holidays, Christmas, whatever it is you're doing. And if you stop by for some grins, we hope to entertain you along the way. Keep grinning, all hail, and enjoy this outro, folks.
Happy holidays.